Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Board of Education meeting. Tonight will be our first streaming event, so hopefully we find this very informative for the people that can't come out and come to the live meeting, and we'll get the information at home, and then if they have any questions, feel free to jot them down and either bring them to the next meeting or shoot over an email to the Board of Ed. Tonight we are only going to discuss the topics on our agenda. If you have anything to discuss that's not on tonight's topic, please come to our next board meeting. We felt that this was very important to have this meeting tonight because we are trying to listen to everyone and all the parents and give you our transparency and tell you exactly what's going on, and hopefully this session will be very informative to everyone. So now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Susan. Okay.
Thank you. We're going to start tonight by going over where we are as far as facing issues in our schools, how we've addressed them, and what we're looking to do to move forward. Before I do that, I want to just thank Mr. Berengia and Mrs. Prohl, Mrs. Valenti. They are teachers that have helped us put some information together. Of course, my administration, Dr. Tribuco, Mr. Santana, and Ms. Capone. Ms. Rios will be talking about some things regarding busing later. Of course, my board members, Anthony and Andrea, as well as our tech assistant, Mr. Parker. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tribuco to start us off. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. So, I guess we'll start with why Fairfield. What attracts people to Fairfield? Fairfield is a suburban neighborhood, rich in culture. Many parents of our students grew up in town and would like to give their children a very similar experience. Families move here to take care of a quality education. We have a safe and strong school system, which helps to maintain property values. And I emphasize not only strong school system here, but also safe. We are very fortunate to have 2 full-time police officers in our schools, to keep our children and staff safe. There are many school districts that do not have that today. So when you think about it, the school system is one of the primary factors that, and I just say one of the primary factors that attracts people to Fairfield. In order to continue to provide the best possible education for our children, however, we're going to need to make some adjustments. So, why? Why do we need to make adjustments? It's really to meet the current needs of our students. We are very, very tight on space at Stevenson. So you ask why. What has changed? Education has changed in general. Our state standards are very rigorous. More children are in need of instructional support and basic skills instruction. We have a growing English as a second language program, as well as a growing special education program. All of these programs require small group instruction. And when you think about it, we're going to touch on class size in this presentation. But, when you think about it, when teachers can spend more time with each student and tailor instruction, it really improves their outcomes and their achievement. So at this time, we're going to come back to, I'm going to show you the map of Stevenson so you're aware of all the spaces that we're using and how we're using them. So Mrs. Brawl. You want to go to that? I thought we were going to go to first and then the map.
Okay, yeah, so the microphone could be, folks that are watching can't hear us, so you gotta talk closely to the microphone. Okay, so in regard to Dr. Tribuco's comments about the need for small groups, we have, students at varying levels that need extra support or extension support, ESL or RTI or HEP, and these different programs don't require a full room, but they do require a room. And if you notice on the chart, it says, the number of students that we have at the different levels that are receiving support. And it's not like those groups, so if you see a number that says 40, that's not 2 classrooms, that's 10 groups of 4 that are trying to work somewhere. And I can speak personally on the idea with the cafeteria over at Stevenson, that presently there are 4 of us teaching in the cafeteria for 2 periods a day, in different corners of the room, because there is no physical space for us to work with students. The office that I have as the reading specialist at Stevenson is just an office. I can see 1 student in there for, a little reading checkup, but for my small group time, I need a bigger space, and there's no other place for me to work with them other than the cafeteria. And then when I went there to use the cafeteria, it was already being used by a couple other teachers. So, we're making it work, but that's not really ideal especially for the type of learners that we're homing. There's distractions. The cafeteria employees are preparing lunches at that time when I'm in there with my students at 10 o'clock. And there's obviously, not great acoustics to be doing things together with the group, and then there's another group and another group and another group. So it's definitely a little, it takes a little juggling to figure out those kind of things, and we're definitely pressed for space if we want to continue offering this level of support in the small groups.
So if you look at
We're going to hold all questions until after we present everything, and then we will answer everything individually. So if you can just jot it down or type it in your phone, we'll definitely touch back at it and address it at the end. Thank you.
Okay, so if you look at the map of Stevenson School, and we start in the red wing, which is the 3rd grade wing, you see room 21. Initially, art and music each had their own room. Art was in 21, and music was in room 1. As we needed space, art and music were combined, alternating schedules. Now, we're in need of a 3rd grade resource room, so now art and music are on a cart, and that room has now been assumed by a resource room. If you go around the front, you'll see where it says reading specialist along the lower bar there. That was once Dr. Cicatelli's office and Mrs. Festa's office. And you can see the reading specialist, Mrs. Brawl, is now in room 11. And room 12, there's a divider there, but that's really one room. I'm not sure why that line is there. But that's another instructional support room. And if you continue down into the green, where the board office used to be, you'll see special ed 3. We actually have 3 speech professionals now and a learning consultant using that office. As you go around you'll see there are 2 rooms. One says intervention and the other says ESL slash special education, they are each being used by 2 teachers teaching at the same time. There are dividers in those rooms. As you go to room 34, that was once the world language room. World language is now on a cart, and that's a resource room for 2 teachers as well. In the cafeteria, as Mrs. Pearl just mentioned, during certain periods, we have four teachers teaching at the same time, and at other times, we have 2 teachers teaching. Room 27 in the back was once a kindergarten room, and that is now a preschool room. And it's my understanding that there's a possibility, due to the number of children we have in our preschool disabled program, has grown significantly this year, that we may need yet another room. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Santana, who will discuss space utilization at Churchill.
All right, so Churchill has been operating kind of in the same way that Stevenson has been operating. So we have, we actually juggle periods here. So all of our larger classrooms, all of our full-size classrooms, all of our full-size classrooms are used as full homeroom classes. So we are actually maxed out on the number of full-size classrooms being used by homerooms right now. When those homerooms go to special area classes, the special area teachers have to use the homeroom classrooms for their instruction. So that displaces the homeroom teacher during his or her planning period, and it creates issues when it's time to set up lab experiments or any types of hands-on activities. They can't set them up because there's actually another teacher in there teaching. So it creates quite a difficult situation. It also makes it difficult for them to reach out to parents. So we have phones in every classroom, but if there's a class in there, that teacher can't use that phone to now reach out to parents. They have to try and find a room or an office or somewhere to go and make that private call. And if the counselor has somebody in her office, and you know, I mean, I've always offered up my phone, but I mean, I've always got something going on in my office. It makes it very difficult for them. The former stage in the old gym, they put up plywood and created a band room back there now. So all lessons and rehearsals go on all day in there, and they actually run concurrently with lunch and recess periods, so we get serenaded by our lessons. And then our health classes are actually taught in here. You get to sit in chairs, but we can't set up the chairs when the kids are in here for health, so they actually sit on the floor because there are times when we have 2 phys ed classes going on at the same time. It creates all kinds of issues, not having those extra classes. So, and then our special area classes are on a cart. Our music, our world language, and our STEAM teacher, our STEAM teacher actually has like the Cadillac of carts. She comes down the hallway and it's really big, and she I gotta get her a horn though, because she's gonna crush somebody at some point. So that is, here's an idea that we saw the same graph that was used by Mrs. Brawl. All of our small group instruction rooms are used for small group instruction. Additionally, many of the offices in the building are used as instructional spaces for small group instruction. So if you see it's in red, grade 4, 5, and 6, our tiered support and our special ed, and that's because in those cases I need multiple classrooms. And because those are all smaller groups, and it's based on student need, and it's based in special ed, it's based on legal requirements. So we need rooms for all of those kids at certain times, and we are literally using every nook and cranny of the building at this point. The art room. So our art room, our art teacher teaches art periods 1, 2, and 3, and then for the rest of the day I use that as an instructional space for HEP and whatever else, any other types of our RTI program, any interventions, we use that room constantly at this point. Our media center is used for media classes 1, 2, and 3, and then it becomes an instructional space again for our intervention periods. Our cafeteria is used as an instructional space in the morning and then after lunch periods, again for interventions. Our rooms 7, 9, 10, 16A, 17, 18, 20, 21, and 24A, and the gym are all shared spaces with at least 2 teachers using the space. We had a very large library media center when I got here, but we needed space, so we put a wall between the media center and the old computer lab where there was an accordion. And the media center, and created another space in there. So we've gotten as creative as I think we can get at this point with the space here. Additionally, all of our homeroom classes are used, as I said, by special area teachers for class periods. So this is an idea of, this is just a chart of the current room usage in Churchill. You see every room is used, and if it's in red, it's used for more than one purpose and by more than one person, and sometimes concurrently. And then you have our world language, STEAM, and music that are on a cart. This is the physical plant, the physical space here at Churchill. So this is supposed to have a pointer on it, but it's not working. I keep pushing it. So over here, room 1 at the main entrance is now a 6th grade classroom where we teach math. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all 6th grade classrooms. 7 is our art room. 8 is a very small instructional space that we use, again, for special ed interventions. 9 is our OT room, which is used as a therapy room throughout the day for students that have sensory needs as well. 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 are our 5th grade rooms. Coming around, you see 15 and 15A, that's the main office and my office. We actually, our main office was a swimming pool this morning. I'm sure you heard from your kids. They were very excited as the water rained down from the ceiling and covered Miss Maria. So she and I shared an office space today, which is great. 16 is the old Chrome lab, which is now an instructional space. 16A is our media center. 16B is the old computer lab, which is now a 4th grade classroom. 17 is a CST office, then 2 bathrooms. 18 is a shared space with our ESL teacher and our speech room. 19, again, that's the band room, behind the wall, cafeteria. 20 and 21 are very small special ed intervention rooms that we use. 22, 23, 26, and 27 are all 4th grade classrooms. And then 24, 24A, and 25 are the, not numbered, but that's the nurse, school counselor, and our instructional coaches. And 28 is, it looks almost the same size as 27, but it's not even close. It's another room that we use, that's our empty room. And then 29 is another very small, that's the smallest of the rooms, I think, that we use. It's almost like closet size, but it has a window, so technically it's not a closet, for instruction, for resource. So that's pretty much what you're seeing here at Churchill and what we're dealing with from a space perspective. So I'm going to turn the program over to Dr. Cicatelli now to talk about some of the steps that we've taken to address it and our considerations.
Thank you. So back in 2017, during that school year, we began to notice that there was some enrollment increases, as well as change in our programming needs. Some of the students that were coming in needed specific programming that was the small group instruction that we were talking about before, whether it was ESL, basic skills, etc. So at that time, we started to examine our facilities and look into whether or not our current facilities would be able to help us deliver the instruction to the students. And we started to realize it was going to be an issue. So that's when we really did start planning our phasing, looking into what were we going to do, because we knew that the enrollment was going to continue to increase. So when it really became an issue back during right at the pandemic time when it began, Mr. Egan from the board and I started looking at spaces to move the administrative offices out of Stevenson so that we can utilize that space for instruction and not for offices. So the summer of 2020, there was 6 of us that moved out of Stevenson School so that we could free up that space. I have 2 phases written because as the school year began, we started realizing that we still needed space for small group instruction, and then I needed to move Ms. Cafone and her secretary over to our space right next door, and that happened over the winter break. So the second thing that we did during that time was we started looking at the referendum. And as you know, we went out for referendum last spring, and that did not pass. But that didn't, as far as it not passing, it didn't mean that our problems went away, right? We still had issues, we knew that they were coming, and we planned the best that we could for this school year, but things continued to happen with our programs that we know that we're just continuing to run out of space. So the next phase that we looked into this school year, Ms. Cafone and I spent a lot of time, along with Ms. Rios, looking at spaces that were outside of the district, a separate space to maybe move our preschool to. That's a self-sustained program. It doesn't necessarily need to be in the building. We like it to be in the building because we get to see our students and help with their interventions at a very early age. But that was a way to try to move some space into that building. When we looked at our options, there weren't many options. There's a lot of regulations that come along with setting up a preschool that the state would not either accept or we would have to renovate. Pre-construction costs to do what we needed, and this is not including the construction at all or cost for administration, it was going to cost us about $656,000 a year. So fiscally, that didn't make sense. So we then looked at what we had talked about, that if we were running out of space, another option would be to increase class size. Again, that's not ideal. That's not the type of education that we want to deliver here in Fairfield. We want to sustain the educational programs that we have. We're also trying to address the learning loss that has occurred over the past 2 years, so putting more students in a classroom in front of one teacher just doesn't make sense to us. So then the next thing for us to do was to take a look at maybe reconfiguring our grade levels at the buildings to try to create a little bit more space. So when we were talking about class size, the first thing that you can see is our school, Stevenson K through 3, what our class sizes are currently. By the way, this PowerPoint's going to be it's on the website for you. So I know people are taking pictures, you don't need to, this will all be on the website. It's actually there now. And then Churchill. So when you look at Grandview and Gould, that's North Caldwell. So you can see that our class sizes are comparable. Then it's Roseland, and then Essex Fells. Essex Fells always has very small class sizes, but that's where we are, and it's comparable. Just to give you an idea, if we moved to reducing sections at each grade level, this is now what the class size would be based on our current enrollment. Now, is that terrible? Not necessarily, but in Fairfield, yes, it is. We don't want our class sizes to be 24 or 25 students, especially at the primary level. It's very hard to deal with interventions at that time and meet their needs. So it's not something that we're looking to do. And that's why we had to come up with yet another plan to try to fix this. Before we get into that plan, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Tribuco to give you a little bit of history of what the schools did look like in Fairfield.
So initially, Churchill was the original school in Fairfield, and it one on the right and one on the left side. When Fairfield broke away from the Caldwell Township school system, we had 2 schools, and at that point, the town was divided in half. If you were closer to Stevenson, K6, you went there. If you were closer to Churchill, you went to Churchill. The next change, all students went to kindergarten at Stevenson, and then the town was still split 1 through 5, and then after 5th grade, they all came back to Stevenson. It was a larger building at that time. They came back to Stevenson for 6th grade. The next change was Stevenson was a K-4 and Churchill 5 through 6. Our current is Stevenson preschool through grade 3 and Churchill 4 through 6. And what we're proposing is Stevenson preschool through grade 2 and Churchill grades 3 through 6. So as you can see, this is not a new concept for Fairfield. There have been many configurations here over the years.
All right, so obviously we have a lot, we had a lot of concerns when we started kicking the idea around. And we came up with a nice list of benefits of moving grade 3 to Churchill. And the first bullet, it actually makes it more equitable from an enrollment standpoint for each building, keeps our administrative costs down by avoiding the need for an assistant principal, keeps the buildings equalized in enrollment. Currently the enrollment for Stevenson is 424 students, Churchill is 290. We will lose 126 graders through transition to West Essex. If we keep the current configuration of P to 3 and 4 to 6, Stevenson will continue to have approximately 430 students. Churchill will have approximately 260. Moving third grade will put Stevenson at approximately 345 students and Churchill at approximately 368 students. Of course, the Stevenson number is going to be dependent upon the number of kindergarten enrollments and the number of new students who enroll versus students who leave. Preschool provides the district the opportunity for more effective and efficient early intervention. This enables us to better target instruction at the P to 2 level, thereby reducing the need for services in grades 3 through 6. Additionally, the move will free up some space at Stevenson and allow for that preschool. And when children of early childhood age, pre-K to 2, are grouped together in educational settings, there could be more of a specific focus on the developmental needs of that age group, which are vastly different from the 3 to 6 age group.
Mr. Santana, can you just go back for a second?
Sure.
So Ms. Cafone can just give a little bit more detail about the preschool and some of the challenges that we are facing right now with preschool?
Sure. We currently have 2 different preschools. One, we have to offer preschool for any child who qualifies as a preschool child with a disability by the age of 3. The problem with that is we can't really plan for how many kids we have coming in. So for some years, we can have just 2 kids coming out of early intervention, qualifying to come to a 3-year-old program. Some years we can get hit with maybe 10 or 12 kids, depending on the year, and they come in all year long. So for instance, this year, we did get an influx of children coming in that needed services that vary at different levels. That also takes up classrooms, whether it's a full-day program or a half-day program. Then we also have to look at our 4-year-old population, which for them, a lot of those students require an integrated preschool classroom. So this is where we get our community students, and we open up the lottery. The past few years, we were lucky enough to be able to offer it to pretty much all the students who applied, which helps not only our special ed students grow their social skills and their speech skills, but it also helps us see the kids coming in before kindergarten and help giving them also some interventions to fix any things that we see at a young age so that they can be more successful students. So currently, our preschools can only have a certain amount of students. One of our rooms is at capacity, and to have that many students plus the staff, they're usually 1-to-1. You're usually looking at 16 bodies in the classroom all talking at the time, most of them 3 years old, crying. It doesn't make for the best learning environment. So by moving the 3rd grade over to Churchill, this will free up a classroom where we can split that classroom and be ready for anybody coming in next year.
I have to say, that there's the one thing that I remember the most from my school finance class in grad school was the teacher saying, your loading dock is always open when it comes to special ed. It doesn't matter. You can have a family move in with 5 students with special needs. It doesn't matter what your finances are. You have to be prepared for that because you don't have a choice. And it's the same concept. We apply that with preschool. We don't have a choice. So we have to make sure that we provide the space for them. And now, some of our instructional coaches are going to talk about the standards and the instructional piece.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Valenti. I am a math coach at Stevenson School. This slide provides a nice visual for you to see that the New Jersey Student Learning Standards are written in bands. Those bands are K through 2, 3 through 5, and 6 through 8. With K through 2 grouped together educationally, there can be a more specific focus on the developmental needs of the students at that age. So from a math curriculum perspective, that's beneficial because those grades, K through 2 specifically, at Stevenson, are working on similar skills and concepts that really focus on addition and subtraction at that time.
So I'm Jim Varentia, I'm the math coach at Churchill, and looking at Churchill and the content in math in grades 3 through 5, the content is very similar. There's a major focus on multiplication and division as well as fractions. So in 3rd grade is where those topics are introduced to start with, and they continue as they go up in the grades. So if those grade level bands are together, it would allow for more consistency in teaching techniques and strategies.
And then as far as the language arts goes, those of you who have children in multiple grades know that there are certain things that we switch over after 2nd grade. So in K1-2, it's more of, maybe you've heard the expression, learning to read, and then 3 through 6 is reading to learn, right? So in K1-2, we have a big foundational, that's really the focus, is the foundational skills of reading. We use foundations, the kids have Raz Kids logins. We're focusing a lot on guided reading and modeling and, reading at the carpet and all those kind of activities that you're doing, shared experiences with the literature. And then in 3 through 6, we switch over, also the DRAs at the younger grades. That's how we measure their progress and their reading levels. And then when we go from 3 to 6, the focus is more towards Lexiles and novel-based curriculum. And the approach changes a little bit because now they're reading fiction and nonfiction all year, everybody, K6, but the content-specific text that they have to be able to read in science and social studies classes, and even lately in the math word problems, we see that, we really need to focus in on those nonfiction pieces and teaching the kids how to, really dissect a math problem. And the shift changes right around 3rd grade. So K1-2 in the language arts is also one banded area, and then 3 through 6 is really a different realm of the focus that we have.
Also in terms of testing, I'm also a testing coordinator, so I'll switch hats for a second. The New Jersey Student Learning Assessment begins in 3rd grade and continues up until high school. So testing lasts about a week with 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even longer, for makeups. So during that time, specials are adjusted and schedules for the entire building are modified, which would affect non-tested grades. So if all testing is in one building, kindergarten through 2nd grade will have very little impact for the entire month of May, so it wouldn't affect their schedules as much.
Continuing with the benefits of moving grade 3 to Churchill, upper elementary teachers are more like-minded with regard to rigor. As Mrs. Prohl touched upon, that jump from 2nd to 3rd, the rigor definitely increases. And having those teachers in the same building and being afforded the opportunity to articulate vertically on a more regular basis would really, necessitates that. So as a math coach, the vertical articulation would help bridge the gap between those grade levels. Again, speaking specifically to math, K through 2 working together on similar skills and concepts, and 3 and 4 working together on similar skills and concepts. And being in the same building would really allow us to more easily meet.
Just one more point here on this slide about the level of homework and expectations. Again, like Mrs. Valenti was saying, with rigor in general, and the teachers being able to articulate with each other, one grade to another, about what their expectations are, what kind of struggles they're seeing with the students. We're always in an effort to make sure we're increasing at a gradual and steady rate with, all of our expectations. And homework is one of those aspects that we are always considering to make sure that we're increasing just the right amount every year to prepare them for middle school eventually.
Okay, so some more benefits that we've identified. Mr. Berengi touched on school routines, but also assemblies, activities can all be more grade and age focused. For example, students in P2 will not have their schedules or routines interrupted during the administration of grade 3 state testing. Parent involvement opportunities can focus more specifically on the developmental stages of students in each building, pre-K to 2 and 3 to 5. School staff is able to focus on one specific developmental stage of a child's educational growth, and then professional development can be more focused on the educational needs of the specific developmental age of stage for each group. Additionally, grade 3. So this is actually our plan. Again, a lot of thought went into this. We shared a lot of the concerns that we heard from people about third graders being in the halls and being in a school with sixth graders and how scary that was. So we've taken all of that into consideration. So our plan is to move grade 3 into what is currently occupied, into the hallway that's currently occupied by grade 5. Okay, so when you walk through the main door, if you make a right, you're going down the 4th grade wing. If you go straight, you're in the 5th grade wing, which will now be the 3rd grade wing. And if you go down the ramp on the left, you'll go down to the 6th grade wing. Grade 5 will be compacted. Right now we have 80 students in grade 4. That would be dropped to 4 sections, okay? And those students would move out to trailers that will be on this side of the building, over by the easement between Churchill and the Red Cross. Trailers will have their own bathrooms, and a security officer will be present during all transitions in and out of the building. Grade 3 and 4 will be assigned the use of the 4th grade wing bathrooms. Grade 5, as I said, will use the bathrooms in the trailers. And grade 6 will be assigned to only use the grade 6 bathroom, which is over here. Grade 3 teachers will be walking, our grade 3, 4, and 5 teachers actually walk their students to their special areas. And when I say that, I mean art and phys ed and media. The other special area teachers actually come to the classroom, so it doesn't impact that. So when they do walk them through the hallways, our 4th grade teachers walk them to wherever it is that they're going, and that'll be the same expectation of our 3rd grade teachers. Recess will be constructed to avoid any 3-6 crossover. So I've got a slide a little bit later that'll explain the lunch periods and recess. We will assign the front of the bus to our 3rd graders and 4th graders. The morning bus drop-off, buses swing through the circle here. They drop our kids off. They come through that door there, and they sit on the bleachers and on the floor and space out. Before COVID, they just kind of hung together, but we can't do that anymore. But this space is monitored by 3 faculty members all morning, from when the buses drop off until students are released to homerooms at 8:35. Parent drop-off on the far side between our building and TD. We have our 4th graders coming in through the front door now. Now it'll be 3rd and 4th graders coming through the front door. And our 5th and 6th graders will continue to use the back doors. They go through across the blacktop, down the back path, and they come through this door. And in the 5th graders' case, they'll go right out to the trailers. Okay, so here's the grade configuration for lunch and recess. So we have 2 periods in the day where we eat lunch and do recess, periods 5 and 6. Currently, at the beginning of period 5, grade 5 goes to the lunchroom to eat, and grade 4 goes outside for recess. Halfway through the period, grade 4 comes in, grade 5 goes out, then grade 4 comes in. Then for grade 6, once we hit period 6, grade 6 goes to the cafeteria to eat, and then goes outside for recess. In the new setup, grade 3 will eat lunch at the beginning of period 5, which is at 11:42. Then they will go outside for recess. Grade 4 will start with recess at 11:42. And then when grade 3 goes out, grade 4 comes in the back door and takes over the cafeteria to eat. Grade 4 then gets dismissed from the cafeteria right into their classrooms. Grade 5 will come into the cafeteria to eat and then go out to recess halfway through the period. Grade 6 will start with recess and then come in the back door for lunch when we make the switch halfway through the period. Okay, and then we get to our final couple of slides. So when this move happens, this is what the configuration will look like. We are still sharing rooms in some cases. We still have all of our homerooms. Grade 3 will take over rooms 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and grade 5 will take over, will go into the trailers. Grade 6 stays the same, grade 4 stays the same, and then we have everything else will remain as is. Unfortunately, we still do not have a room for music, world language, and STEAM. We are still going to need to use the media center for classes after media classes. We may even still need to use the cafeteria from time to time. The reality of it is not much is changing with regard to what we're doing. The trailers just provide us the space to move the grade level up. And again, that's just the same exact map of Churchill.
I think it's important to note that although it's not changing much at Churchill as far as space, it is changing the space at Stevenson, which is our bigger problem right now. This is just a Band-Aid. This is not something that we think is the answer to sustain the issues. We went out for a referendum because we need the space. We've talked about that we were already out of space when we were doing the referendum, and we have renovations that are needed to the building. But at this point, as the programs are continuing to evolve, students are coming in, programs are needed, preschool students are aging out of the state program and coming to us with no warning. We need space for these children. We need to be able to still provide the education, the quality education that we have been giving, and we want to continue to be competitive with our sister districts as the children go up to West Essex. So by all means, this is not an answer, a long-term answer. It's a short-term solution to try to give us more space at Stevenson. And it's educationally the right thing to do based on everything that our coaches had shared educationally, and it's fiscally the best way to go for us as well. Nobody wants to see trailers out there, but when you're looking at trying to gain space, like I said, when we looked at moving the preschool out, it was $656,000 a year, where the trailers are going to be about $50,000 a year. So fiscally, it does make more sense. Before we take any questions, we have one more presentation that we need to get through, and then we will take questions. So I'm going to turn it over to our business administrator, Ms. Rios.
Good evening. My name is Leanna Rios. I am the business administrator. Our office is responsible for the district's transportation, for those of you who do not know that. Thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the definitions for those of you who may not be familiar. So let's just start with who must be transported. In accordance with the state law, NJSA 18A39-1, all public elementary school students, which is grades K through 8, who live more than 2 miles from their school. These students are said to live remote from school, right? So according to the law, these are the kids that must be transported. Currently, the Fairfield School District has been providing transportation services to all students. That is known as courtesy busing. So what is subscription busing? What's the difference? Subscription busing is where a Board of Education is not required by law to provide busing for students who live less than remote from school, even for safety reasons. However, boards are permitted at their own discretion and expense to provide transportation for students who reside less than remote from school and may charge the student's parent or legal guardians for this service. This transportation service is called subscription busing. So just to give you an idea of what is currently happening, as of November 21, the district has been providing a total of 638 students courtesy busing. This is a total of 13 buses, okay? And this is just our regular education. Courtesy busing right now, of those 638 students, courtesy busing is being provided to 453 of these students who live 2 miles or less. That's a total of 9 buses. What the law is saying is required is to provide transportation to those that live more than 2 miles, which are 185 students or 4 buses. So you can see there's a huge difference there. What are some of the challenges that we're seeing? Well, this is an example. 363 students at Stevenson at the moment are reserving the offered transportation. On average, about 200 to 220 of these students are actually riding the bus. How do we know this? We're taking attendance. We're taking attendance on a weekly basis. So what does that mean? There's only 60% ridership. The remaining 40%, or about 150 students, are not riding. This equates to about 3 buses at Stevenson only, which is over $100,000 a year. $100,000 a year that we're pretty much not using. We're still paying for it, but it's not being used. What are some of the other challenges that some of you may have heard? And when you go to your local Dunkin' Donuts or your Target, right? Everyone is hiring. There's shortages everywhere. Well, guess what? Bus drivers are not exempt from this. How has the bus driver shortage impacted our schools? The current conditions for busing and bus drivers mirror what's happening across the nation. COVID has exacerbated these unfortunate conditions along with long-standing issues in low driver pay, strict licensing requirements, and the transient employment population. Now, to address some of these issues, just so that you're aware, the Department of Motor Vehicle has temporarily waived the under-the-hood requirement. So you have DMV doing things that they probably have never done before to help address this, but still creating a problem. There's actually sort of a bidding war going on, right, between school districts and bus companies because these drivers are looking to see where can they make the most money, right? Some of them are actually leaving and going to New Jersey Transit because whether there's a pandemic or not, guess what? New Jersey Transit is riding. The current contractor that we use for our district, Student Transportation Services of America, they have lost 25% of their staff. Bus drivers are required to obtain a commercial driver's license and a student school bus and passenger endorsement. These are stricter guidelines than in the past. Bus driving is a part-time job requiring drivers to seek additional employment. Driver positions are very transient. Some drivers are unable or unwilling to follow mask or vaccination mandates. So what do? They resign. These challenges increase the cost of transportation. And let's not even talk about fuel. So I won't even go there, right? So let's take a look at what's happening. As you can see, if you look at 2017 and 2018, I just did a quick comparison. The state aid that we're receiving for that we received for transportation for the 17-18 school year was $21,731. $21,000. How much did we spend that year? $365,059. That's a huge difference. Let's look at the 18-19 school year. For the 18-19 school year, the district received $148,937. How much of that did we spend on transportation? We spent $405,205. How about the 1920 school year? The 1920 school year, our state aid remained flat for transportation at $148,937. Our transportation expense went up $23,000. We spent $428,600 on transportation. What happened to the 2021 school year? Our state aid, flat again for transportation, $148,937. How much did we spend? $562,420. And I want to throw in there that of that $562,000, we got a discount, believe it or not. That is with a discount that we negotiated with the vendors that we contracted with. And just for so you know, for the current school year, our state aid, flat again. So we have yet to figure out how much transportation is going to cost us this year. And let's not forget about that $100,000 we're throwing out the window. So what are we recommending? Subscription busing. What will subscription busing do? Subscription busing will allow the district to supplement the cost of transportation. Transportation will be provided to those living 2 miles or less for a fee. So I know some of you may wonder, well, how is the distance between a student's home and school being measured? Well, according to the state website, okay, which is nj.gov/education, this is the School of Finance Division. Measurement is made by the shortest distance along public roadways or walkways between the entrance to the student's home, not alternate address, because as we all are aware, we have parents that are having their kids picked up and dropped off at alternate addresses, between the entrance to the student's home and the nearest public entrance of the school building. This measurement is for eligibility purposes only and is not necessarily the travel path to or from school. Subscription busing will also allow the district to better budget for transportation that will actually be used. The funds that are not budgeted for transportation will be used for instructional purposes. So what happens next? So at the last board meeting on January 20th, the board adopted the first reading of a subscription busing policy and regulation. This is just the first reading. This doesn't make anything official. We're obviously having this informational meeting now to make you aware of the needs. The next step would be to identify those students that live 2 miles or less. And we're looking to send out a survey to determine the participation, right? Because in order to do this, we want to make sure that the participation is there. The next step will be to review the survey results, and if participation, is over 50%, then on the next board meeting, which is February 15th, the board will adopt the second reading of the subscription busing policy and regulation and establish a fee. Following that, the next step would be to send out the subscription busing applications, which we're hoping to do this around the end of February. All of this takes a lot of planning, right? So this is something that we're starting early. We want to be able to start early. And what we would like to do is when we send out the applications and the applications come back to the business office, we would like to request a deposit, because at least that will give us some sort of a guarantee that these students will actually be using the buses. So that pretty much sums up subscription busing on our end. I guess I'll turn it over to Mr. D. Pascal. Thank you.
Before I begin, I would just like to thank our superintendent, our business administrator, our principals, our teachers, all of our faculty and staff that made tonight possible, Officer Joe for keeping us safe, and most importantly, our children. And I want to thank you that are here in person in the audience and for those that are streaming live with us. Just want to touch on a couple things before we open up our question and answer portion of tonight's meeting. My counter tonight, Andrea and I are here to represent the Board of Education, and I want to let you know that this meeting was purposely brought to you because of your cry to us for transparency between the Board of Education, the administration, and our public. So thank you very much. I want you to know we're listening, we're here, and we're going to face these issues together and come up with a solution that hopefully can make more people happy than not. I want you guys to think about the time and effort that our administration, faculty, staff, and teachers put into tonight, okay? I also want you to know that everybody here is on the ground, the teachers, right? They're the heartbeat of our children's education and future. Now, like Dr. Cicatelli stated, unfortunately, when the referendum failed, our problems still exist. They're still here. And no one better than our teachers, our principals, our superintendent to let you know the challenges that we're facing every single day. Because they're here, they're the heartbeat, they're the pulse of everything going on education-wise in this district. So with that being said, I want to thank them and thank you and open up a question and answer portion of this evening. So this portion of the meeting is very similar to our Board of Ed. Come up, jot down your name and address, and you can address all the questions to the board.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tyler Masterson. Thanks for holding this meeting today. I have several questions, actually. My first being, I'm sorry, my child is only 4, so I'm not familiar with who everyone is here, but I know that you were talking about how crowded Churchill already is. And it seems like the solution is to put 5th graders in trailers. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes. So, listen, we've been talking about it. We're not solving the problem. We're putting a Band-Aid over it. And the reality of it is we're out of space at Stevenson.
But it sounds like you're out of space at Churchill.
We are. We are 100%. But there are some mitigating factors that I'm not I can't speak about with 100% certainty. I will leave it up to Dr. Cicatelli and Mrs. Rios to talk about as far as trailers and locations. And when everything shook out and we went through everything, we went through all of the details, the most logical thing for us from an educational standpoint, from an instructional standpoint, was this model.
What would a 5th grader's day look like in a trailer? Would they be there all day?
No. So this is a unique building because we actually run 3 different schedules here. So our 4th grade is self-contained in their classrooms. They're in there for reading, writing, math, social studies, science. There are other periods that they're in there for. They literally leave the classroom for phys ed, media, and art.
So those are times they would not be in the trailer. And lunch.
So that's grade 4. Grade 3 will follow a similar schedule. Grade 5 right now operates where we have a 3-teacher team and a 2-teacher team. Next year it'll be 2 2-teacher teams. One teacher teaches reading, writing, social studies. The other teacher teaches math and science. The students move from teacher to teacher, classroom to classroom.
But would that be within trailers?
Yes, yeah. So the trailers are basically going to be right next to each other. There'll be a walkway, as far as I know. Am I correct in stating that? So they'll just basically transition as they do here.
And Ms. Masterson, I'm sorry. I just wanted to touch back to what Dr. Cicatelli stated earlier. This is not the solution. This is a Band-Aid until we can get a referendum passed.
Right.
So this is a temporary fix
But
for...
we have to assume that it will be this way for the foreseeable future until we can put something else together that the community will pass.
It would be, again, I would assume it would be a couple of years, at least a year or two. But the public wanted us to revisit the referendum process, which we are. And by moving third grade here, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done over at Stevenson, but it cuts the cost down to doing any additions at Stevenson. So there's our issues that need to be addressed there, but it doesn't change the fact that we need space here. So it's just a temporary solution for the current problem that we're facing right now. The biggest problem.
I'm sorry, if I could just add, the other piece to this is, eventually, even with a referendum, third grade's coming here. So get them here now. Because at this point, you know, this is where the trailers can go. So let's get them here and let's just make the move now. And then hopefully we will be able to solve the problem, you know, once with the referendum.
Thank you. And I guess a follow-up would be, is this up for debate? Is this happening? Are you informing us? Is this under consideration? So how is the decision going to be made, I guess is the question. It has a decision been made? Why is everybody looking at me like
that? So yes, this is the route that we are going. We have no other options. When we were looking at the options that we did share, nothing else was going to work. So at this point, we need to. If we were going to try to keep costs down as well, this is the best way, but it is the most educational, sound decision at this point to give us what we need at Stevenson.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you, guys.
And I also wanted to mention that my first question to our superintendent and the administration was, how is this going to affect our third graders? Like, I know that a lot of the general public is wondering. Now I have children in both Stevenson and Churchill, and I was told and did a little research that that's actually how the curriculum is written, if I'm not mistaken, correct? It's K through 2 and 3 through 6. So it's not out of the ordinary. A lot of other districts are K through 6. So again, not that we're following what everybody else does, but my biggest concern as a parent was 3rd to 6th. But educationally, I think, and I think everyone here that's obviously, you know, in the profession, you know, feels that that's the best fit for our children. So as a board member and a parent, I'm for it.
Will your kids be in the trailer?
At one point or another, possibly, yes. Yeah.
And if I could just add, you know, we always have a big celebration with our third graders. We call it Third Grade Moving Forth, F-O-U-R-T-H. And it starts at Stevenson early in the day, and then it transitions to here. And we do tours, and we do student interviews, and it's a really cool day for all the third graders. When this goes into play, we're going to include the third graders moving up to 4th, as well as the second graders moving into 3rd, so that they have the same experience. We just have to come up with another catchy name.
One other thing that we did discuss is that in August, we would make sure that we allowed the second graders that will be moving into 3rd to come to the school and visit with their parents so that they would feel comfortable. That was something else that we thought would be very important.
Hi, how are you? My name is Jessica Cohen. I'm a K-2 teacher in another district, but I also have a second grader who's in Stevenson. I have the teacher side of me and the mom side of me, so I completely understand what you're saying about moving them in over here. It makes absolute sense educationally, academically. The class sizes have to stay small because we cannot educate these children having the class sizes the size that they are. Even an extra 4 children in a room is a big difference. So I totally agree with that. My biggest concern is that my child's a second grader, and he had 6 months of regular school in his entire schooling life in kindergarten. He has really not had a real school year since he started there. And my husband and I moved here because we loved the primary school situation that was here. The K-3, the intermediate. I teach in the K-6. I hated it. We just moved our 6th graders finally into middle school. It happened during COVID, and we're seeing such a poor response for them, unfortunately, emotionally, because they really just were not ready for it. But it's a question, but not really a question, because I'm sure you don't have the answer for it, is I just hope that consideration is made for these kids that are moving into 3rd grade. My 2nd grader is not a 2nd grader that I've had in all the years that I've taught, and I can tell you that he just is not mentally, emotionally, academically ready for a 3rd grade rigorous program. And I know that this is like a statewide thing, we have to be very conscious of it. I just hope in Fairfield is being conscious of the fact that these 2nd graders that are moving to 3rd grade, they are not going to be 3rd graders. And that we really have to, I don't want to say cut them some slack, but we're going to have to put in some extra supports in place to make sure that they are ready for the academics that are being thrown at them, because I'm very concerned about my son, and I'm concerned about the other students, because I can see that he's not where he should be, and it's not because there's anything wrong, it's because he just has not been given a real school year since he's been in Stevenson. So I just hope that there's something that's in place, and I'm sure that there will be, but that is a big concern for me, and I'm sure other parents.
So, can I just say, they're all going through that. So, and we're seeing it across the board. My wife teaches kindergarten, and she says she's literally dealing with 3rd graders, or 3-year-olds at this point. What we have seen is that this has taken a toll on our kids, and we are addressing it. I think Mrs. Prahl can probably speak a little bit about some of the interventions that we're doing with all of our kids at every grade level. The thing to keep in mind is we're not changing the rigor of grade 3, we're just changing their location. But yes, we do very seriously take into consideration that emotional piece. You can talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we're doing.
Sure. So just to go back to like the tiered support that was on the screen when I first spoke, the little table that had the numbers, and I referenced, 40 kids is not 2 rooms of 20. So typically, New Jersey tiered systems of support means that you offer various levels of support for various students depending on what they need, high, middle, low, everything in the middle, okay? So what's happening is if you take a true RTI model, which is like the bottom 20% of the students, those students would receive extra support. If we have 100 students in grade 2, then we would support the bottom 20 students. But you might notice on that chart that I had, sorry, Mr. Harvey, we have like 30 to 40 students that we're servicing. We've gone well beyond the 20% in an effort already, as you said, Mrs. Cohen, to be on top of this. And a lot of the parents that I've spoken to on the phone and in Zoom meetings this year, it's kind of like, my students never gotten support before, and I'm like, it's okay. We have extra staffing. We're taking extra steps to make sure that we are closing that gap and helping them along as much as we can. I was very fortunate at Stevenson that we were able to add another intervention teacher this year. So again, when you see those numbers, yes, we need space for her to work, but it opens up for us to have more opportunities. Oh, thank you. There it is. 42 in kindergarten, 40, 45, and 54. So like that time where you see 54, that's almost half of the current third grade. And a lot of what Mr. Santana was talking about also with the transition, like a lot of the 3-4 stuff is going to be the same when they move over. The curriculum itself is not going to change at all. But another thing that we do that I forgot to mention in 3rd grade is like DI starts here at Churchill, but we do something called TI in 3rd grade as a transition to help them. And that's why you see such high numbers of that support. So 54 students come out for like small group support. We have 9 teachers on top of the regular 6 that teach 3rd grade. That's 5 general ed teachers and 1 special ed that take small groups. So even if some of those students aren't really in that bottom 20%, like the RTI model shows, we're already scooping them up to try to give extra support because, regardless of the move, we understand your feeling as parents and educators as well, that, you know, we really need to target, especially the youngest learners, the current third graders who have not had a regular year. And, you know, like you go back all these years and you think, oh my gosh, these are all the formative years when they are really growing and learning to read and these foundational things that we can't risk missing out on those opportunities. So we're definitely already on it. And I think, like Mr. Santana said, it's really not a matter of the rigor changing, just the location. And the third grade teachers, you know, they are already stepping up their game because it's a tested grade. So it's a little bit different anyway in that regard. As Mr. Renchi has said earlier, the band is kind of created for 3-6. So there are things already at the primary level that it's like third grade seems kind of in their own little wing over there at Stevenson because they are doing things so much differently than the younger grades.
Also to address some of your concerns, especially this year for a lot of our students who have learning loss. We have used the CARES Act money to start a before school program that we have used the kind of the same model of our tiered intervention. We're looking at kids that maybe are not getting as many services throughout the day because we don't have enough staff, enough room, and providing those before school, and that's going to run through a cycle, so hopefully we can get everybody in. We've also planned to increase the summer skills program that we offer, to increase more teachers for the next 2 years at least, through the grant money, so that we can help close those gaps that unfortunately the pandemic has created for almost all of our students in some way or another.
But wait, there's more. On top of that, we recognize the social emotional piece, the isolation that our kids went through, I had a teacher say to me today, can I please get a table? I just want a table where I can sit with kids and connect. And unfortunately, we can't put them in there because we have so many kids in the room and we have to maintain the spacing. But she said, I feel like I don't have that connection with them like I've always had, and it's true. This is something that we're all dealing with. I tell the kids all the time, you're gonna have to go through life and you're gonna have to deal with things all the time. This is just one more thing that we have to deal with. But the social emotional piece is real, and we are addressing that in a multitude of ways, some of it with extra funds that we're receiving, but it's also a part of our system of supports here. It is part of that multi-tier system of supports we have to have as a district. So yes, we do recognize that they are not developmentally or emotionally where they should be, and we are addressing it.
Number one, why was it mentioned that the preschool is a possibility that they would move off-site if you already have trailers ready to go back for the most part? Was it one or the other?
Yes, so.
But you guys already basically said that you're getting those fifth-grade trailers already.
So before we looked into trailers, we looked into moving the preschool off-site. And when we looked into that, we were very limited to locations, number one. And number two, when we found out the cost, and that was pre-construction, plus adding administration costs, Ms. Cafone and myself and Ms. Rios brought it to the board. To spend that kind of money, it was really going to be about $1 million a year. So that really wasn't an option at that point. We had to look at another plan. And that's when the trailers came back onto the table to look into to see what we can do.
So it's not one, their trailers are already going back.
That's what we're doing now, yes. So when we were looking at how can we free up some space at Stevenson, we looked to move preschool, we couldn't do that. So we're moving third grade, which does make more sense. We're keeping all of our students in our 2 buildings. That's what we would prefer. So that's the option now.
My next question is for busing. My kids get bused. I use the bus every day except the one week, a couple weeks I was home and let Ellie go to school a little bit later. But otherwise we use the bus every day. And we live right by Stevenson. We're under the 2 miles from Churchill as well. So would I be offered a busing option, or I'm just out of luck and we have to take them?
So what would happen is we would send out the survey, because not everyone that lives close to school may want to pay, right? We would send out the survey, and then based on those results, so if you get the survey and you say, yes, I'm interested, then you would get a busing application. Then at that point, you would have to complete the busing application and return it along with a deposit. So that's how that would work.
I am allowed to take the bus, my kids.
Right. So then at that point, and obviously we're going to check the mileage, right? Because every year we submit a report. So what we do is we earn a double, and we're going to triple check the mileage to identify those individuals that would fall under the mileage, send them the survey, and then we would follow up with a busing application. So if you're within that, you would get a busing application.
Well, what if I'm not? Because I'm not.
If you don't fall within the transportation required, then you would not get a busing application.
You said 60% of the kids that are taking the bus right now are not even taking the bus.
Correct.
So you're taking
60%
10%.
ridership.
Why can't we just knock those kids out? And for people like me who I take the bus.
So it's 60% ridership, right? So of the 600, and I think I said 83 kids that we, let me just go back here to my presentation. Bear with me 1 second.
I mean, if you're not taking the bus, you should be offered.
So of the 638 students, so of the 638 students, 185 of those are the ones that live more than 2 miles. So those would be the ones that, according to the definition, would be required. They're required. There is not an
I get
option.
that. But what if you have extra room? Why not offer it to other kids? I just don't understand why do we have to suffer the ones that take the bus every day?
So
then I'm sure there's kids that live out of that 2 mile radius that are not going to take the bus even if they sign up for the bus.
So this goes back to the definition, right? Unfortunately, we didn't make the definition up, and unfortunately, we didn't make the rules up. They're just there, and these are the rules that we're choosing to now follow. So, like I mentioned before, statute 18A pretty much just says that by law, the children that must be transported are those that live more than 2 miles.
I get that. So if you find that your buses are not full, why not offer to those parents that rely on it, that have 2 jobs, that we need it?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I think there's miscommunication.
Do you think your child's not going to be offered the
Yes.
opportunity to be on the
Yes.
bus? They will be.
They will be. You just have to pay for it.
100%.
That's why.
You're either going to choose
But I have to pay for
But
it.
you have to
Yes.
pay for it. But no one's going to say, no, your child cannot utilize the busing in town.
Okay.
That's where
I
the
thought we were, I thought there was.
That's the
Yeah.
miscommunication.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely, okay. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you.
Hi, Angela outside, 11 Josephine Drive. I just have a question. Was it considered, or is it even an option to vote on the budget each year instead of going with the 2% increase or the 2% cap?
That's usually if you go over the 2%. So we've been lucky enough that we've managed to maintain our local tax levy at 2%.
Was it considered to offer the vote to kind of supplement some of these financial costs?
It would not be enough. It would not, no, it would not be enough. We're also, and I don't want to go off topic, and I don't want to, this isn't something that I'm going to welcome or engage anyone else in a conversation because I want to stay focused. But, because of the referendum not passing, there are other projects that we've had to take on, okay? Such as having to upgrade our electrical panels at Stevenson, okay? So these are projects that now we're having to piecemeal and use our budget funds for, okay? Look at the incident this morning at Churchill with no heat. That's going to be another project that we're going to have to take on because chances are you're probably not going to be able to wait until the referendum passes. So unfortunately, it's not going to be enough.
So it's just not an option to vote on the increase in the meantime?
No, no. And not only that, you have to remember, having an election to vote, that also costs money. That costs money.
In what way?
Election, having the county put machines, counting, advertising, mailing out ballots, same expenses pretty much every occurred we did the referendum. It's an expense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Warren Italiano, Four Mines Report. So I can't get past trailers. Like you guys, I'm fixated still at trailers. And I just can't get past it. And I'm sitting here saying, what else is an option at this point? I think I'm hearing, because the referendum didn't pass, this is where we're at. And we're at a situation where we have to put trailers to let 5th and 6th graders be part of Churchill essentially, because we're out of space. Do we have any other options? Is there anything we can do at this point that we could look at? Because even if the referendum passed, right, we still would be in a position right now where it would take 2 or 3 years before everything was complete. So what would we have had trailers in between that time? What would we have been doing?
Right, so that's what I was going to say. It's not because the referendum failed. I think we need to make that clear. It is about our spacing issues. That was very clear during the referendum. That is still an issue for us. At this point, like we were explaining, with the preschool kids aging out of the state program and coming to us, that created more spacing issues for us this year on top of our programming issues to begin with. So would we have had to either increase class size temporarily? Maybe. Put trailers up? Maybe. One or the other was going to happen. We already expressed that. We knew that it was going to take about 18 months for the referendum to be built out, if it passed. So when surprises occur, like they have, we have to figure out a space. I mean, I think they did a very good job at showing where we're putting all the kids now. They're not ideal situations. I don't know who wants to teach in a cafeteria nor wants their children being taught in a cafeteria, right? So these issues are here. We absolutely would have had to do, something would have been done in the interim, even if the referendum passed.
Right.
We're just rolling with what we're given.
Go back for a second. You said it would be about $1 million a year
To move out.
Take preschool and put them into a different location.
So that was brought up. That was brought up in one of the board meetings, but taking a facility off-site requires administration and the cost that comes with it. So if you hire a principal, I don't know what principals make, but just take that salary alone, and it could be 15% of, or 10% or 18% of the $1 million a year cost, plus the facilities, plus the teachers on site. So, yeah, I mean, nurse, counselor. So we looked at these options, the board looked at these options, and we thought it was, hey, this might work. But when we actually looked at the hard cost, we realized that it's just not possible.
So I think when we were visiting the referendum, I think the next time to vote before we'd be able to vote was what, September 2022?
Yeah, there's 5 times during the year that you can go out for referendum. We passed, no, it was September 21, December, I think January, then March, and then April, I believe are the dates. So,
if we were to vote on, I realize that we're not just going to snap our fingers, right, and be able to vote on a referendum. It's a process, and unfortunately for us, that process happened during COVID, so everything got convoluted, so nobody's fault, it's just the situation and the circumstance. If we were to vote for another referendum, when would that take place? Can we confirm that it is September 2022? And I'm trying to figure out how long we would have to be with this trailer situation before we can try to stop putting a Band-Aid and make a larger fix.
So we can't confirm a date because we haven't even started planning another referendum. And one of the things that we heard several times during that process is that the community wanted to be very much involved in that process. So we have to come up with a plan as to how are we going to involve the community more than what we did. We did have a group, but it wasn't enough. And then reevaluate our needs at this point, because we are moving third grade over to Churchill. And what are going to be the needs for Stevenson, and what are going to be the needs here at Churchill for the long term, because we can't keep doing this. So that's the next phase. I mean, this has been something that, when we first started looking at off-site places, it was October, right? We started in October. I mean, this is a long process when you're looking at things that are going to go into place. So now that we're going to move forward with this piece, now we can start looking at what's the next step so that we can keep that Band-Aid on for just a little bit of time to get to the next step, that we can actually have a fix.
And keep in mind, the referendum started approximately 2 years. So the referendum process started in 2017 and came to a vote, months ago, right? And in 2021. Because, yeah, exactly. So with that being said, this is a temporary fix for a current problem that we have that we are going to address. And by moving the third grade here, which is, from what I understand and from what was presented, and I believe in my heart, more educationally sound for our community, if I'm not mistaken, that will require a lot less in the referendum that Stevenson's going to need. It needs a lot, believe me. There's a lot of updating that the school needs. But we heard from the community excess. It was too much. An addition here, building here, building there. With moving them here, we can address the issues that need to be updated in Stevenson and concentrate on the long-term future of Churchill. But yes, I mean, no one ideally wants their child in a trailer.
I'm standing for it.
Yeah.
Just so you know, the kids love trailers. I'm not gonna lie, I've been That's
what I was gonna say.
I've had teachers.
The teachers are all like, we want the trailer.
And they love being out there. Not that we want that, but I can also tell you the trailers are not gonna be like this disgusting eyesore. They're actually pretty nice.
I was just going to say, I mean, listen, feel free. There's several vendors out there that provide what they now call modular classrooms, right? And I welcome you. Listen, I welcome you. Will Scott, you have Box Modular, you have Mobile East. Go to their website. These quote-unquote trailers, they're not that bad looking, okay? They have bathrooms, okay? They're really nice. There's actually, when you look at receiving proposals, these vendors come out with their plumbers, with their electrician. This isn't just, okay, bring a trailer and drop it on school property. No, there's a lot of work that goes into that. So please, when you hear the term trailer, don't think of the ones you're seeing driving up and down, 280, and they're just dropping them off somewhere. No. They're very, very nice. So I just want to point that out. And feel free, like I said, to visit some of these vendors. Look at the website. They have pictures. And I kid you not, they're actually called modular classrooms.
I taught in one in Mountain Lakes. It was awesome. And the kids did love it. I have to tell you, it was great. Nobody bothered me. It was the best. I'm just saying, the kids loved it. They loved coming out there too. I mean, they used to come out and lunch and hang out, and it was high school, but they did like it.
Liz probably wanted to say something real quick.
I was just going to say on the same fact, like the teachers and I were talking about it a little bit, and everyone's like, I'll take a trailer, a brand new room with air and perfect heat and a private bathroom. Like, this is a teacher's dream, And
I have a visual in my head.
no, it's more, it's like, RVing, like, fancy, like how you go fancy glamping.
It's glamping. It is.
It's much nicer than that.
They are very excited about the bathroom.
And it just reminds me of because I work so much with students that need extra help and intervention, and the parents are like, oh, I don't know, I'm like a little uneasy about them going out for extra help, and I always like try to paint this image in the parent's mind, because your perception is like, oh, my child is being taken away from their friends, but the reality is, I stand in the doorway and I like start waving, and they're all like, oh, are you here for me? you know, like they're all excited about it. So I think like our perception and their perception is not always the same. And they may feel like it's almost a special thing that, you know, they get a different kind of setting.
So, thank you for the cheering section about trailers. I'm not convinced, sorry. So just to manage expectations, you know, I know that you're saying that it's a Band-Aid and a short-term solution, you know, but it was brought up that the first referendum began in 2017 and wasn't voted on until 4 years later. So this is minimum a 4-year solution, or 7 if you're going to take in maybe construction time, planning time, if the next referendum passes. So 7 years to me is not short term. My child is only 4, so that means in 5th grade she would be in a trailer. And I don't like it.
No, we don't anticipate it taking another 7 years. I mean, we've already done all of our research and looked at options, so on and so forth. Now we would just have to update some of our studies that we had done because they're obsolete, and we need to get the community input as to what they think is what should be happening as far as the building. So a lot of the legwork has already been done. It's now just updating what we've done. So it's not taking 7 years. I mean, we are hoping we can turn around within a year to do another referendum, but we haven't done the entire planning yet. So we need to do that and get the community involved.
And I don't think we need a promotional company. I don't think we need, with the last referendum, we had a promotional company that came in. I don't think we need that this time. I honestly think that if we just listen to the superintendent and we listen to the principals and the teachers that are literally here day in and day out and go by the needs of them, the community will see it and it'll pass. Right now, so keep in mind, 2017, the board has changed. It's a different board than it was then than it is now. Right? So I can assure you that the board wants to expedite this as quickly as possible. Because I have a first grader, and I don't want my first grader in a trailer 9 years from now. Right? So, you know, we hear the cry for what's needed, and we want to address it as soon as possible. But this is the first step to get the space that we need to fix the problem we have right now.
I do have another question about the busing.
About
the busing.
The busing, okay.
So I live within 2 miles, probably, of those schools, and my 4-year-old watches kids get on the bus and we wave every morning. So she's definitely looking forward to taking the bus, and we both work, so we need the bus. I think we were just talking about perceptions. The perception, I think, to a lot of parents is that we already pay for busing through our taxes, and I feel like a lot of people are going to think that they're paying twice if they have to pay again. So what would you say to that?
So the taxes that you're paying, as you know, a part of that comes to the school. It's not everything, okay? And even then, that's not enough. As you saw with the one graph that I showed with the state aid, it's not enough. It's not enough to cover the expenses. Most of that money is being used to pay our salaries, right? We have contractual obligations. We have salaries, we have health benefits. So to be honest with you, the taxes that we're receiving is really covering those major expenses. That's really where it's going to. It's going to the salaries, it's going to health benefits, yeah, and instruction. But obviously the bulk of it is salaries and health benefits. And that's everywhere. That's everywhere.
So looking at the chart, I mean, I think it was upwards of $500,000 that you guys were paying in busing for the current year, or maybe it was last year.
2021, 562.
What would you reallocate those funds for going forward?
So it would be for instructional purposes. Obviously, that's a conversation that we need to have, and we really don't know if there even would be anything to allocate, right? So this is why we need to send out these surveys, just to have an idea of what the participation is.
Okay, and then lastly.
Can I just chime in real fast? So, I've been principal here for, I think, 6 years now. And just to give you an idea, so we spend $500,000 and change on buses now. My supplies for my classrooms It was in the $70,000 range when I started, and we've had to cut that in half in the time because we've had to reallocate money to transportation. So it's a constant juggling act that Mrs. Rios does every year of, okay, how are we going to be able to get what we need to get out of what we have? And now our state aid is stayed stagnant, but our cost has gone up. And if you look at the major cost to districts with regard to unfunded mandates and issues like this, transportation, it eats up so much of our budget. And it gets to the point where we're cutting costs in areas where we shouldn't really be cutting costs. And that's really where we are right now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, it's okay. Also, there's the expense of the trailers, right? So that's also where we would be using some of the money, right?
You did
To pay
mention a
for some of the-
$50,000 figure. Is that for one or for all four?
I'm sorry?
The $50,000 figure, was that for one or for all four?
That's for the 2 trailers. That's for 2 trailers. Total of 4 classrooms. So each modular classroom will have two classrooms in each trailer. Also, I just want to point out, as some of you are aware, there's all this CARES Act money, right? Well, what are you doing with the CARES Act money? We can't use CARES Act money for transportation because whether COVID is there or whether COVID is not there, transportation is a constant. So we cannot use these CARES Act money to fund an expense that is there regardless of COVID or not.
Leanna, if you could just clarify where the $50,000 number is coming from?
Yeah, just let them know that that's not the cost of the trailers, that's the cost of,
That's
once
the
the
lease.
trailers are installed, what the cost would be yearly to
Right.
maintain.
So basically the cost is the lease, right? We would lease it. We wouldn't be looking to purchase the trailers. We would be looking to lease it. So that expense basically is what we would pay on a monthly basis, okay, for 1 year to lease both of the trailers. Each trailer will have 2 classrooms, okay?
And those $50,000, is it annual or?
Annual. Yes. Annually, we would be 50,000. And like I said, there's a lot that goes into these trailers, right? It's not just that they're bringing in a container and dropping it. There's bathrooms that have to be installed. There have to be sewer lines that have to be run, electricity, HVAC, alarm, surveillance, access pass for the teachers to be able to come in and out of the trailers. There's a lot that goes into this.
Now, $50,000 seems like a lot of money yearly, but when you consider the fact that purchasing these trailers as an option, which we looked into, can be in excess of $400,000 a piece, and we need 2. So it would be an $800,000 investment to purchase the trailers and put them on site, as opposed to $50,000 a year. And if we did need them for 2, 3, 4, we hope that that's not the case. $800,000 to $200,000 seems more fiscally responsible than any other option at the table at the time. But we did explore the avenue. Even we explored used trailers. We found a company that had used trailers that were set on a school. They were very rarely used. They were 2 years old. And they were beautiful. But the price difference between a 2022 and a 2019 was only about $45,000.
I just want to add to that. So the $50,000 a year, they are used trailers. Now, let me just, again, I just want to go back. We're not talking about a trailer that's, dented, graffiti all over it. No. They're nice. Even though they're used, they're still very nice trailers. I don't know if any of you watch Tiny House Nation. I'm a fan. I can't wait to have a container house when I retire. They're nice. They're not that bad.
First, thank you for the transparency. I do believe that you hear us when we say that, and it does put things into perspective, so thank you. Leanna, what are current transportation costs? You said $650. Current transportation costs, $650,000.
So the figures that I have as of now are for 2021. So for the 2021 school year, we paid $562,000. And this is only the transportation between home and school. Right, we still have transportation that we provide for the special ed students. There's still transportation for when we had field trips, right? So that 562 was what we spent in 2021.
And what's our budgeted transportation cost for this school year?
I would have to get back to you on that because it will take me a little bit of time just to pull that number.
With the subscription busing and that change, what is the projected new transportation cost?
So I can tell you right now, on average, well, going back to about 2 years, and I say 2 years only because we've been lucky enough that we have not had to go out and bid for the buses, because if we go out to bid now, it will be a lot more. So about 2 years ago, we were looking at $35,000 a bus. But that was because we were able to renew and we haven't had to go out to bid. If we go out to bid now, that's going to be a lot more.
So what is the projected new cost with the subscription busing?
So we haven't determined a subscription fee yet, if that's what you're...
What is our cost? So you're going to eliminate those, we legally don't have to provide the transportation to those.
We don't have those numbers yet, right? So this is why I need to do the survey, just to have an idea.
So we don't know how much we're going to, sorry. So we don't know how much we're saving from that yet.
No, we don't know that yet because we need to figure out what is going to be our participation. We do know that as of now, if we go forward with this, say we go forward with this tomorrow, we have to have 4 buses automatically. We're required. That's required. 4 buses.
So the very least expensive it can be to us, what is that number? If you're only busing the people that you're legally obligated to bus, what is that?
So at $35,000 a bus for 4, you're looking at $140,000 buses. $140,000.
Okay, so that's like, quote, best case scenario, meaning from a savings perspective, not necessarily all in best case scenario. So the least expensive it can be for us is about $140,000.
If you're comparing the 2021 amount that we spent, which was the $562,000, compared to the 4 buses, so you're looking at about a $400,000 savings. But again, that you're looking at 2 different school years, so.
Yeah, yep.
You know.
I think you said this, so I'm sorry, but I got confused. What is the total all-in cost of the trailer? So you mentioned 50 for the lease, but does that include plumbing? Like, what is the all-in cost? Lights, electric, security? What's the fully loaded?
So the $50,000 a year is for the leasing, okay? And for the used trailer, the leasing of the used trailers, and it does include plumbing, right? There's HVAC, there's electricity. You have all sorts of data equipment that has to run burglar alarms, intercom systems.
Sorry, was that for both of them?
For both trailers, yes.
Okay, so we're not seeing any additional cost to having them here. That's fully loaded cost.
Correct.
Okay, so the new...
And just to go back, any proposals that we seek, we always work with our architect, right? Because there's a lot of other issues that we have to consider, right? If you place a trailer on a flood zone, let's just say there's certain elevation requirements and so forth. So, this is always done in coordination with our architects.
Okay. Okay, I just want to say that to make sure I got it all right. So we think the trailers are going to cost us $50. We think best case scenario, we could save $400 on the transport cost, and that's not attributing anything to what we would earn in fees for those paying for busing. So we'll save $400, but then make money on people that do subscribe. And when you were saying earlier that when Mrs. Altai was saying, could we open up a vote to see if we can just agree as a community to, I don't know what it's called, but waive that 2% cap. We hear you guys, you need money, like, let's open it up. And you said it wouldn't be enough. How short are we? What are we talking about? We're talking about $1 million, $4 million. How short are we on what it would take to?
Yeah, it's hard for me to tell you that answer right now. If to go out for a vote on a budget, that requires a lot of preparation. That's not something, my budget is due. The public hearing is actually at the end of April. There's just not enough time to do that if we wanted to, explore that route. It's just not realistic. And even then, like I said, it wouldn't be enough. I mean, you're looking at, in salaries alone, you're looking at over 8 million, and these are
So I'm
contractual.
sorry, I just want to clarify. I'm not asking for that to be done in time for a vote for next year. I'm asking how short we were, and we determined it wasn't even worth it.
Okay, so I just want to give you a number. The referendum we went out for was $30 million.
And how much did that cost us in payments a year? What was our cash flow to pay the debts?
So I can speak of the average household in Fairfield.
I remember the $250.
Would be roughly $30 a month.
What did the school?
And that would have been for the whole referendum.
What was the school, the district, so after the debt service aid, what was our cash flow to repay the debt each year? Was it like $1 million a year?
So Mr. Di Pascal, if I just may real quick, because I don't want to go off topic, right? So the referendum information is on the district website.
No, I know, it's
It's
not actually on
in-
topic, because I'm trying to bridge the shortfall in the operating cash flow and the need to do this, and put the children in
So
trailers.
unfortunately, right, so a lot of the questions that you're asking, I don't have answers for you, and here's another reason why. Governor Murphy is scheduled to have his budget address February 22nd. 2 days after that, they release the state aid numbers. So unfortunately, I don't know, I don't even know what our revenues will be, right? So when I do my budget, I'm doing my budget based on 85%. But now you also have to keep in mind, the state aid that we got this year was higher than last year, but that doesn't mean that it's gonna increase again, right? So there's so many factors, there's so many moving parts, and unfortunately, you have to, we kind of have to wait, right? So I really, at this point, I'm kind of at a standstill because I don't even have my state aid numbers.
Okay.
So this is where, you know, this whole subscription busing, it's time sensitive. If you look at the timeline between the survey, between the applications, between the second reading, all of this is being done in time because in March, the board has to vote on the budget. By March, we'll know what our state aid numbers will be.
How do we know we can't afford it if we don't know any of that information? So.
Well, that's why we wait for the February 22nd, right, for budget address. Excuse me?
This decision was made already, right? Did I misunderstand?
I think you're misunderstanding that we have.
The curriculum portion of it, the curriculum portion of it, right?
Oh, so we made the decision already to go to subscription.
The subscription busing, we're waiting, we have to see what the results come back to see if the participation is there. If we don't see that the participation is there, then, you know, it may not be worth it. It may not be fiscally prudent, right? So we really have to do the survey and see what the participation is going to be.
Can I just ask a question?
That was helpful. I thought before.
Can I ask you a question though?
Yeah.
You know, these are totally separate topics, right?
Well, I thought before when Ms. Masterson asked, has this decision been made? Are you informing us or are you asking? I thought the answer was that it was made and that applied to all three topics, not just the trailers.
So the moving of grade 3 here and the need for trailers, yeah, that's a done deal. Okay, but that has nothing to do with the subscription busing.
Right.
That's a space issue that we've been dealing with and that we've come up with a solution for after going through, I don't know, maybe a dozen other options.
So
You
the
know,
only thing that's confirmed and committed to is the movement, not the other topics.
I can't speak on that, but I think you
I'm sorry,
can.
that was definitely my misunderstanding. I thought before when you said this has been decided and we're doing this, I thought it applied to the entire presentation and not just the
Oh, no.
movement, so.
But with the subscription busing, just want to make this clear, with this, when that letter comes home and we're taking a survey, you have to vote on if you want it. Because if there's not enough participation, there will be no subscription busing.
Vote on if you want to go to subscription busing or if you want to enroll
If
for busing.
you want to enroll in it, if that's the way that we decide we're gonna go, what percentage we need to get that subscription going.
Okay.
And that's a valid question about the shortfall. Leanna, after February 2nd, and the state aid is 22nd, is published, would you be able to give the public at that time our shortfall? Is that a number that's?
So the public has an opportunity to come to the board meeting where I present the tentative budget. It's called a tentative budget for a reason, okay? And that meeting will take place in March, okay? So that is where the budget is presented. At that point, if for whatever reason there's a shortfall, if the board disagrees with the budget, there is an opportunity to go back and revisit the budget before it is finally adopted in April, okay? So again, going back to when the governor has his budget address, it's February 22nd. Usually the state aid is released about 48 hours later. And then at that point, that is where I start entering my budget into the state software and looking at where we stand with our numbers, okay? If there's something that we need to look at, right? If there's something that we need to cut back on, that is a conversation that takes place amongst all administrators, okay? We're already beginning to have some of these conversations. We also have a finance committee meeting. So before the budget goes to the public as a tentative budget, the finance committee sits and we discuss the budget. And if there is a shortfall, it's discussed.
At that March timeframe?
It's discussed with the finance committee before the March meeting. The budget is presented, the tentative budget is presented in March, and then we do the final adoption in April. So there's several opportunities to look at the budget and address any concerns that may come up.
Okay, and just for complete clarification, as a community member, that opportunity is from your March presentation until the April vote?
Correct. March, we present the tentative budget. The public has an opportunity to come, ask any questions that they have, okay? And then in April, that's when we do the final adoption. Now, just keep in mind that if for whatever reason, and luckily this hasn't happened, most of the time, the budgets, a lot of any issues that come up are ironed out during the tentative budget because the turnaround time from the adoption of the tentative to the final budget it's short. There's a short time frame. So by the time the tentative budget is presented, a lot of if there's any issues, those issues are already addressed. Usually they're addressed even before you go to the finance committee. Okay, so I just want to point that out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let me just clarify one thing though. When we were talking about the fifth grade being in the trailers, third grade coming up, yes, that's been decided. The subscription busing is an option. Ms. Rios talked about that the board adopted the first reading of the policy. Now after the survey, that's going to determine whether or not we move forward. If there's not enough participation, I think what everyone's missing is that doesn't mean we're keeping our 13 buses. We're not giving courtesy busing moving forward. We can't do it.
Courtesy busing gone?
Courtesy busing is gone.
That was my question.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to make sure because I don't think that was clear. We cannot continue to sustain that. I've been here for 9 years. My first year here in 2013, the business administrator back then was saying to continue to give courtesy busing was greatly impacting our budget for educational purposes. And we just continue to roll it over. But we're at the time now that we cannot continue to roll it over. Our programs are suffering because we don't have the money for them as we're putting it towards transportation that is not being utilized 100%. So that has to be clear. Taylor, before you come up again, I don't know if there's anyone else that wanted to ask a question that has not asked yet. We're trying to still kind of follow the format of the board meeting, if you don't mind. And Taylor, we will get back to you. Thank you.
Sorry I'm late. We had a basketball practice over there that we were told that we couldn't after we were here. So I'm a 4th grade mom, and my son will be going into 5th grade next year. And I hear about this Tammy Geneselli. I hear about this glamping and how glamorous these trailers are. I don't see how this is the best option for our kids. Again, I missed a lot of the meetings, so I apologize if you've answered anything or said anything. I'm absolutely not a fan. What happens if it's pouring rain? Do the 5th graders have to switch classes? Right, 5th grade switch classes? So how are they going to be able to switch their classes when they're coming from a trailer and it's pouring raining outside? How are they going to get to their other classes?
I'll answer that.
Okay.
It's covered.
They're gonna walk.
They're gonna what?
They're gonna walk. They're
They're gonna
gonna,
walk in the pouring rain.
it's
or
like, Well, I mean, again, listen, we're gonna be logical about all of this, I promise you. So, you know, there are options that we've talked about. There is always the option of an umbrella. So I mean, they're gonna walk, they're gonna, you know, we'll work it out. That's the least of my concerns, to be honest with you.
I'm just trying to think how this goes, like security.
Well, that was also addressed earlier,
Okay.
was that the security officer will be out there.
Okay.
Police officer will be out there for
So
transitions.
while they're in the trailers, the police officer will be.
He's everywhere. He walks around the
No, I
building, he
know.
walks around outside, so that's gonna be no different. We have cameras that are gonna be out there. So this is all, there's gonna be swipe card access for the teachers, so all this stuff is gonna be addressed. That's, you know, that's really the least of my concerns. I know we're gonna take care of them. You know, will there occasionally be a time where they may get a little wet? It might happen.
I don't care. I don't care about them getting wet. I'm just saying that part of 5th grade, right, is learning how to switch classes, get ready for 6th
Absolutely,
grade,
100%.
get ready for middle school.
Yep.
So what's actually going to be taken away from our 5th graders by sticking them, again, COVID had to quarantine our kids, we're basically sticking our kids outside in the corner in the trailer. I don't see that as glamorous, but I guess
Nothing
you
is
guys
gonna
don't
change
want-
with regard to 5th grade. The
I'm just
difference
giving
is
my-
their
I'm giving
location
my
is gonna
opinion,
change.
just coming from a parent.
No, Ms. Janicelli, we touched on all that.
Okay.
We're still gonna rotate.
Yeah.
And
Go
I'll
in
watch
out.
the video back and
Yeah.
everything.
So we get it.
Okay, and my other question is, because I thought in Fairfield you couldn't walk to school, right? Was that in place at some point, or you weren't allowed to walk to school, I thought? That's why they had the busing and everything. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. However, are there gonna be, if the busing is taken away, or less kids are gonna be able to get the busing, or some people can't afford to pay for the subscription busing, are there gonna be, crossing guards and more, police officers monitoring if kids happen to walk to school? Especially with the bridge, because the majority of the kids are coming from over the bridge, and God knows when that's gonna be done, so.
So those will all be options, obviously, like scenarios that we will look at. But again, until we really see what this participation is, we really, it's hard for us to plan for anything.
Is that something that could be like noted, you know, to make sure that?
Well, absolutely,
Well,
absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
Because obviously safety is everybody's biggest concern, so.
Absolutely.
That's just my question. Okay.
And I
Thank
didn't want
you.
you to think I thought it was glamorous. I was just trying to
I
say.
know what you meant. I know, I'm not trying to knock anybody or anything like that. It's just, you know, I feel like all of our kids have had a rough go for the past couple of years. And the last thing personally I feel my son needs is to be outside in the trailer. Basically you're telling us it's a done deal. We don't have an option, we don't have a say. This is what we're learning about it. And, you know, I'm not happy about it. Again, what am I gonna do? Take my kid out of district and go pay for him to go to a different school? Or suffer through the 5th grade so that when he comes to 6th grade, he can walk back in the building? So that's where I'm at, but, all right, thank you.
I would just like to make a comment to all of you, and I'm going to be totally transparent. I am not in favor of the trailers either. Since 2017, I've been on this board way longer than that. We have done site surveys, we have done building improvements. We did a ton of work went in to that referendum for $30 million. We tried everything we can to get it passed, and we tried to explain to the community the need for space in these buildings, and no one took it seriously. And now the scary part is that we have no choice but to put a Band-Aid and to spend money to put these trailers on. So are we all in favor of it? No. But at this point, the referendum didn't pass twice. We don't have a choice. But the amount of time that went in to creating this referendum, the amount of hours we put into it, you can't imagine. So we tried everything before this Band-Aid. So I don't want you guys to think that, you know, that we're treading lightly or we're thinking that they're glamorous, because I don't either.
You know, it's just that this is like how we're presented it. It's, here it is, This is what you're doing, your fifth grade, your fourth grader this year, next year, he's going to the trailer.
But since 2017, we've been trying to tell in every way possible how we have no space, we have no space, we have no space. We need this referendum to pass. No participation.
Hi, I'm Kathy Schuler with the Progress newspaper. So when you say this is happening, is it happening next fall? That's what it
Yes, the plan is for the fall.
Okay. And one other question, why fifth grade in the trailer switch to sixth grade?
So our sixth graders use the lockers, and that is important to us to continue to have them be prepared for when they go to middle school. So that's the reason why.
Also sections. So our current fourth grade, as of today, only has 79 students. We are getting a new fourth grade. I was actually in fourth. Today we're getting 4 new students. So the problem gets bigger. So we have a new fourth grader coming in, which gets us to 80. Listen, we're not enthralled to have 20 kids in a class. We would love to have 18 or less. But 20 kids in a class is not, it's not mind-blowing by any stretch. So the only grade we can do that with is grade 5. Grade 4, moving into grade 5. So that's why we're using, that's another reason why we chose grade 5 to go into the trailers.
So with that, so your plan will work.
We all know.
Good evening. So your plan is based on the kids in current grade 4. Would that work for current grade 3 going to the following year? Or we would have to then increase the numbers of trailers as well? I'm just curious.
Is that a question or a statement? Either way, you're right. No, you're right. We are probably going to have to add a trailer next year. After the year after. Probably going to have to. Listen, again, the reality is we're out of space. So this is what we have. And it's,
I was at the meeting in 2017 when the spacing issue was actually discussed, so I know that. I'm also volunteering in school. I know how short it was and how the space was moved and used and utilized. So I understand that. So classrooms are going to be put, there's new space is going to be created, so that's one solution. But I guess we're going to be working on, or the board is going to be working on fixing the Band-Aid, basically the permanent solution. So with moving the third grade here, I know that the plan was, even for the referendum, the plan was to move the third grade here, the addition in both Stevenson and Churchill, and hence the $30 million proposal, right? So now moving that and doing that, is that going to change what is being planned and how that number will go down? Do we know an idea? Because
So the original referendum, yes, had third grade moving here, but we were still putting an addition on over at Stevenson. So I don't think we're going to need to do an addition at Stevenson. I don't want to say that 100%. We're hoping that after moving them out and we reconfigure things, the referendum will only have to be some renovations and upgrades to Stevenson, but that's not 100%. And again, we want the community to give us some input. We were putting a STEAM lab there. We were putting a true OT room that we need. So there are things that we wanted to do with that addition, but we might have to just do renovations. I'm not sure if that's going to work. So the plan would be not to necessarily build there. One thing that we were hearing is that people didn't want an addition at Stevenson because it was in a flood zone. Even though it was being elevated and so on and so forth, they didn't support building onto a building that was in a flood zone. So that's why whatever plan we put forth for Stevenson, obviously it has to work educationally, but we want something that the community is gonna support and feel like that's the right decision to do, so we need to get them involved. Thanks, Agnes.
Anyone else?
Oh, if I can ask, since we're adding more trailers here, and we are still not fixing completely the vending, because there's still need for more space no matter what, right? Why not add one more to put the music and art room there?
So we were really looking at what was the absolute necessary thing right now, because we knew it wasn't going to be something that the community was going to be thrilled with. So we were trying to put the minimum amount that we absolutely needed, and not just say, okay, we're going to put on like 7 trailers, and now the trailers are going to be the same size as the building. So that was the reason why. And again, it's not ideal. You know, and the teachers don't like going on a cart. That's not ideal. That's not what we want. So we're just trying to put what's necessary in order for us to offer our programs. Right. Oh, and the easement is an issue as well.
Right. So there's a sanitary easement that kind of runs across, and then there's a light pole. So we're already having to go back, right? So we're kind of limited with that space as it is.
Hi, sorry, thanks for taking my question again. Tyler Masterson. So I wanted to clarify, Dr. Cicatelli, what you were saying about the busing before. So courtesy busing is over. So people are either going to vote for subscription busing, or they're going to have to find another way to get their children to school. Is that right?
They're either going to have to, if they're not eligible, right, for transportation, they're going to have to complete an application only if they're willing to pay for a fee that will be determined in the future.
At this point? When will that survey go out? And will it go to incoming kindergartners? Because right now I get no communication because my child doesn't go here. But I'm sure the incoming kindergarten class parents would want to participate.
So the plan is to have the survey go out before the next board meeting, February 15.
So how do you capture the incoming students' families?
So those children have to register, right? So in our parent portal, we work with the superintendent's office and we get a list of those kids that are currently registered. So in the parent portal, when they get registered, they're not active, right? They're considered like pre-registration. There's a certain coding that's used for those kids that are registering for the incoming school year. So I would get a list of those kids.
So if I have my child registered before the next board meeting at the end of February, I would be included on that survey.
Correct. We will work with the superintendent's
to get the
office.
word out, because registration is open until the end of March, so they have a month worth of families that you may be missing.
But that's not going to exclude them from being able to have subscription busing.
But it's
just
going to
to get a feel.
exclude
We
them
have
from
700
voting for it.
students in the district, right? We need at least 50% to make it worthwhile. So a lot
But
of parents
60%
are
don't
saying-
take the free busing, so that's a concern.
Well, but they're reserving a seat. That's the difference. They're telling us that they need the bus. They want the bus, but they're not utilizing it. That's the difference. We know that there are families that actually need the busing, and we want to give them that option. You know, but we can't put buses on the streets that no one's using. That's the problem.
So we're going to have registration. We're going to have kids coming in and out throughout the year. That's a given. It happens every year. It happens whether there's subscription busing or whether it's not subscription busing. And we've made it work, right? You haven't heard of anyone say, I went to register my kid and transportation was not available.
Well, you've always offered free busing before, so.
I'm sorry?
You've always offered courtesy busing before, so.
Right, but I just kind of want to give you that assurance that, you know, obviously if the parent, if we're mandated to provide transportation, we're not going to tell them no. And at the end of the day, it's really still going to be optional for that parent that just registered their child. So there's a good chance that you may have some saying they don't want it. Plus, they're young kids, right? So a lot of times the parent likes to drive them to school anyway.
My point is that the incoming kindergarten parents are probably not aware that this is even happening. that this is up for a survey or an application to be done in addition to applying for kindergarten. And I don't know if you have a way to reach out to those people.
Right, so like I mentioned before, any student that registers, they get entered into Genesis. There's a side that we see that you don't see, okay? And that is what we...
I don't even know what Genesis is, to be honest with you.
Right, so basically, if you want to pick up your child early, you were instructed a couple of years ago to enter that information into Genesis, right? So that's the parent portal. We have an administrative side of that software, where when a child comes in and they get registered, they're entered in there, but technically they're not live. They're listed as pre-registered, okay? And then that's when I would go in, run a report, who are my pre-registered kids. I have the parent's email, right? And I just want to point out, please make sure you log into Genesis and update your contact information, right? Because this is the information that I will be using to send out the survey. So if you have an email address from, 5 years ago, you might want to update it, because that's pretty much what we'll be using.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can come up, sir.
Hi everyone, Ethan Atiev. Just want to talk a little bit more about the trailers. I know we mentioned the reason why fifth grade was selected was just because of class size. But really, how much is it to get another trailer, right? I know you already said what the cost is. So what really makes sense? Why do we put a grade in there that doesn't switch classes during each subject? I know Tammy mentioned about what's going to happen if it's raining outside. Well, how about the wintertime? It was 10 degrees this morning. What do we do with the kids? We're going to ask them to put jackets on and switch classes. Do we think about maybe even having a third grade go to trailers? This is going to be the first year they're here, right? They're not going to move classes. Doesn't make sense to do that.
I can just address the third grade thing. So third grade is going into those classrooms. Like that was the plan all along. If you look at the referendum, where we're putting them is where they were going anyway. So when eventually the referendum hopefully gets passed, that's where they're going. So our thought process was, put them where they're going and leave them there, because that's where they're going to be. Grade 5 is going to be part of, if you remember looking at the old the referendum that didn't pass, those grade 5 classrooms were part of those new classrooms. So that was our thought process with grade 3, was put them there now, and we're not going to have to ever move them again. They're in.
Also not moving them there from Stevenson now into trailers. I mean, it's a big transition for them to begin with. So we didn't want to have to say, well, welcome to Churchill, but you're kind of on an island by yourself when they don't know anything.
How about the fourth grade?
The fifth graders have been in this school. It's not that this is their first year coming here, and they're not only 8 years old. It's a little bit older. One thing that you have to also understand is that we are trying, no matter what grade you put out there, they still have to come in the building. So if they're fourth grade, they still come in for specials, they have to come in for lunch. So anyone that's out there is still going to have to come into the building.
My concern is for fifth grade, you actually switch classrooms, right, for grades, for subjects. Is that still going to be the case?
So they'll rotate between 2 teachers depending on the subject.
Within the same trailer, or are they going to have to go outside the trailer? Because my concern is for the wintertime, it's really cold out there. So are we going to ask the kids to put coats on? We're going to have them carry an umbrella? Yeah. These are fifth graders. Fine.
So one thing I was just asking Ms. Rios, I'm not sure so there's 2 trailers, but there's 2 classrooms in each. So we need to see if there's a way that they don't have to go outside, if they can go between the 2 classrooms inside.
So you weren't here before, but that's okay, but I just wanted the proposals that we received, they will be reviewed by our architect just to make sure that we address all those concerns, right? So we're aware of those needs, we're aware of those concerns, so just trust and know that this is something that we're working with our architects on, just to make sure that we address all of those concerns that you're bringing up.
And how big is the fourth grade class?
I'm sorry, I would be, I'm the business administrator, so unfortunately I do not know the size of, you said the fourth grade class?
You're talking about the current fourth grade class?
No, next year's.
70?
Third grade? Current third grade.
Yeah, current third.
Current third going into fourth is 100. And then current 4 going into 5 is 80. Yeah, current 3 going into 4 is 100.
So if we say, hey, listen, instead of the fifth graders, let's do the fourth graders, it would just be another trailer. And how much would that be? It's another 25,000?
No, because we don't know where, if it would fit.
So at this time, right, the proposals that we received are for 2 trailers.
Right.
The issue with Churchill is that there's a sanitary easement, there's some sort of an easement that runs across, and then you have a light pole. So that already limits us, right?
But
So-
didn't we say next year we're gonna have to add another one anyway?
So currently the proposal that we have right now is for 2, okay?
Well, for the following year, I thought I heard.
If it gets to that point where a third one will be needed, then obviously we would have to take a look at what spacing we have. Because now you're talking about the field, right? That's back here.
Right.
Again, that's an if, I just want to clarify that.
Listen, I understand the need for trailers, like, you know, obviously I voted yes for the referendum, unfortunately it didn't happen, all right? But let's take a step back and say, like, what makes sense? Does it make sense for the fourth graders or the fifth graders to be in those trailers?
If I may, I think the administration, the principals, and the staff, they do just that, and that's exactly what they came up with. They're telling you, in their personal opinion, that it makes the most sense with the facts based upon what was discussed earlier, why they chose the fifth grade.
But why choose a grade that actually switches classes? That to me doesn't make sense. Like, there could be other factors, fine, but like, we don't live in Florida, we live here up in North Jersey, right? It's cold. It was 10 degrees today. So we're gonna have kids go outside, go to another trail. They already have to come out and go into, you know, gym or whatever you might have in here. It's just, they're gonna be moving around outside.
I think you're thinking they're gonna move a lot more than they are.
Yeah.
So we have a teacher that teaches reading, writing, social studies. The other teacher on the team teaches math and science. Math is a double block. So essentially, they're only moving, so they'll go, let's take the reading, writing homeroom, okay, the English teacher's homeroom. So those kids will be in there for reading, writing, social studies. Then a transition. And then they're in that other transition for 3 classes. Obviously, there's going to be a lunch period built in there. And that's, I mean, they're going to have to come inside for media. They're going to have to come inside for art. And they're going to have to come inside for phys ed. So every other class, every other grade level does exactly the same thing. They have to transition to those same exact specials. So really all we're adding is one transition that they're going to be outside for. So if there is movement between classrooms within the trailer, that would be awesome. But if not, you're also talking about, I mean, the way the trailers are configured, from what I remember, and I taught in trailers in both Mountain Lakes and Mount Olive, the way the trailers were configured, the classrooms, the doors were right next to each other. So basically, you just kind of did this, and you did this. And that's essentially what the kids are going to do. You know, the reality of it is it needs to be a class. It needs to be a grade level. 5th graders, to us, made the most sense based on the class size, the fact that we're getting 4 trailers, or 2 trailers, which is 4 classrooms. It just, everything else that we looked at just made sense. Yes, it was considered that 3rd and 4th don't really transition that one time, but it was only one time, is really the transition in the end.
Could we say, like, for next year, given class size, it makes sense for the 6th graders to go there? Like, our 5th graders that are going to go to the trailers next year? are they gonna do it again the following year if every other class size is 100 plus?
No, because of all lockers.
We need to, I actually just had this conversation.
You mentioned the lockers. What if we can't fit another trailer, right? Because you mentioned there's easements and everything else. And then we're like, you know what, the sixth graders are gonna have to go there 2 years from now. So our kids are gonna be in the trailers for potentially maybe 2 years from our up. Is that what we're saying? Potentially?
No, at that point, we'd probably look at a different scenario with what the grades are. Like, in other districts, sometimes they have only 2 classrooms out there if there's a 5-section grade level, right? So they might put 2 third-grade classes out there, and then there's maybe a music class or something else. We'd have to reconfigure it so that it's not the same kids that are going to be out there. But again, we just have to look at it as we move forward. We don't know what it's going to take. As far as, are we going to need another trailer the following year? Maybe not. Maybe some of the small group instruction changes and we can free up a classroom in here the year after. So there's a lot of things that can change, but I understand your concern. You don't want them to be the ones. The 6th grade would be very hard because they change for every subject. So we don't want to do that to them.
Also, keep in mind, everything we do here with our 6th graders is preparation for West Essex. So the lockers are a huge deal. You know, whenever my first year here as principal, the first thing I did was we had an admin meeting with West Essex, and I said, okay, where are our kids struggling? And one of the biggest, and I asked all the parents and the kids as well, you know, what's the biggest transition? Lockers was huge. That's when we made the decision based on the feedback from the kids and the teachers at West Essex to put those in. So it is important for our 6th graders to be transitioning every period and to learn to use the lockers efficiently. So you're not going to have to worry about that. You know, our current 5th graders are going to have, our current 4th graders are going to have that opportunity as 6th graders.
And we thought about maybe just putting electives in the trailers instead.
Some of them are on a cart right now, so we don't have enough to put them all out there. So that's an issue as well.
Okay. And I guess my last question on the bus, it's very hard to say whether or not, yes, I'm going to opt in without knowing the cost. That's a big factor because I've talked to other people and the costs vary from $200 to $3,000. That's a big expense.
I could just touch on that so Leanna doesn't have to. Again, based upon the survey numbers, it's impossible for us to come up with a cost. Right. That's the reality situation. It's not the answer you want to hear, but without everyone filling out the survey and giving us the number of participants that are going to, utilize subscription busing, it's impossible for us to tell you. It can be reference other districts. Other districts, local districts are $600, between $500 to $600 or $700. That's the only information that we have now is what other districts are charging.
So is the process to fill out the survey?
Yeah, we went over that earlier in the meeting.
And then another letter say, hey, if you really want to do this, it's going to be this.
Well, once we know how many people commit to the service, we can find out how many buses we need and break down the cost, therefore relay that information to you.
But when you say commit, it's just like, yeah.
Yes, I'm going to utilize the service.
But if let's say you get, hey, it's going to be $3,000, you go say, you know what, I don't want it.
Yeah.
So the process would be send out a survey before the next board meeting, which is February 15th. Once we send out that survey and we review the results, the next step would be to send out the actual applications. When we send out the application, obviously by that time we'll have more information and we will require a deposit.
But
Okay,
you have
and
to tell everyone what the expected
right. So like I said, the application will have that information in there, and then we will require a deposit. So that way, when I sit here and I'm preparing my budget, I know how many buses about I'm going to need. Of course, listen, this isn't my first, walk in the park as far as budgeting. We already know that we also there has to be a cushion in there somewhere. So to the point that someone mentioned with the incoming kids, we're aware of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi, Maria Gabriello, 11 Crescent Drive.
Going back to the busing, right, I'm just a little confused on, I know you said you're gonna send out a survey by the next board meeting, but the survey, the results of the survey may be skewed depending on how much it's going to cost. If you're gonna come to me and say it's $200, I'm gonna say, sure, I'll pay the $200. If you go to someone and say it's $2,000, I may say, you know what, I'll try to get, somebody to drive my kids to school. So I think the results of your survey are going to not be accurate in the sense of we don't know exactly how much it's going to be. That's why I think a lot of parents are, very hesitant about the subscription busing without knowing roundabout, is there an estimate that you can give based on your ridership now?
So the way to address that is do the survey, take a look at what the participation is.
I don't think you're
and then, I'm sorry, can you give me a chance to finish? Thank you. Send out the application, and we can always send out the application to all of those parents, whether they filled out the survey or not, right? So that's another option to explore. Right, but what I'm saying is,
you can send out your survey. I'm going to say, yes, I'm a parent who needs busing.
I understand.
Based upon 50%, can you give a range? If 50% of the general public says yes, can you set a range on that particular number?
Yes.
Okay, we'll include that.
You can't go to a family and say, yeah, you know what, we have a good, participation rate, so it's going to be 200. You're going to get people to say that $200 a year per kid. All right, I can do that. But if you're going to say $2,000, you're going to get people that are going to say no because maybe people can't afford $2,000.
I understand what you are saying. So what I'm saying is we could do the survey. Another option, whether the results come back 30% participation, 50, 60, 70, when the time comes to send out the application, we can send out the application to everyone, whether or not they completed the survey or not. And that application will also include the fee. I understand what you are saying. I'm just saying that that is another alternative. I'm not discarding what you're saying.
But I think before you work in accordance with sending out the survey, some kind of price range needs to be sent out along with it to say, we are looking at a price range from $200 to $500.
So Leanna, basically.
So I think you need to do the numbers based on your current ridership.
I'm not discarding what you're saying, and I don't think you're understanding. I'm not discarding what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying is, I understand what you heard. I get you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I understand what you're saying.
But based upon what she's saying, can we take an estimate on 50% of the ridership, 50% of the students subscribing to the subscription busing, and send out the survey stating, based upon 50% enrollment, this would be the average cost, and then adjust accordingly whether it's higher or lower. I think that's what she's stating, to give them a general price.
Yes.
Okay, that would be great, because obviously this needs to go out for contract, you have to get the lowest bid. I mean, I know how it works. So everyone here, I think, would benefit from having some kind of range.
I understand.
So that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was asked to ask a question. Did the board consider moving 6th graders to West Essex Middle School? It would then be true 6th through 8th middle school, and it used to house 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, so it should be able to accommodate the 6th graders. So that's the question a friend of asked me to ask. I guess.
I don't think they want them.
No, honestly, I know. Yeah, the issue you have there is it's a consortium decision, and Susan's going to be better able to speak on this. But it's a consortium decision. It would have to be all sending districts. Couldn't just be us, and they'd have to want us, and they have to have the space. I don't know what their spacing is.
I was
We've offered many a times, but they don't want to take the sixth graders. We've asked, and it's not that we don't love our sixth graders, but it makes sense. I mean, in most towns, right, you have sixth grade in your middle school.
But this is also an issue of the other 3 towns.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if I could just quickly, just personal note on the busing, and I know this is, I know exactly how you feel because it happened with us in Parsippany where we had courtesy busing, and then it actually wasn't even, we weren't even offered subscription at the time. Yeah, it was, okay, you're done. We're only doing the busing that we have to do. So I'm like, I wish I had the option of subscription busing, but I didn't. They just cut it out, and a lot of, I don't know many districts that still continue to do courtesy busing because transportation costs are so out of control. So from a parent perspective, I get exactly where you're coming from. But we didn't have the option of subscription. Ours was just, that's it, we're done. Okay, sorry.
Hi, Maureen Italiano, 4 Meisner Court. Thank you guys for doing this. I did say that earlier when I came up. We appreciate it. Quick question, Liana. I noticed that it seemed that the utilization rate on the transportation service was pretty low. Are those numbers just 2020? What about pre-COVID? My daughter was in kindergarten last year, so I don't know what the utilization looked like for transportation. Was it the same? Do you have any idea?
It was approximately the same.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Pacifico, 9 Crescent Drive. One other consideration with the busing. If you don't get a 50% or greater, okay, you're going to have a significant increase in people driving their kids to school. Is the township, is the police department prepared for that? Because as it is now, on the random days that I have to drive my kid to school, and that's rare, because my kids take the bus, it's a process. It's a half an hour. Now, I know it's a 50% cutoff rate. If you have a very low participation rate, you're going to have all these parents driving kids to school, how is that going to be handled? Because that's not going to be an easy process. So I just want to put that out there so you consider it and figure out how that's going to work out.
Yeah, we already talked
To the police department about that. With the parents driving their kids now, I think this is where we're at. So they don't see an increase with the traffic. We've already talked to them about that piece. So of course, we're going to still try to put some things in place to make sure that we can try to work it out. Beginning of school year is always going to be a disaster. It always is with the parents dropping their kids off. But we're going to have additional help as far as traffic flow.
I'm sorry, this year, there's not going to be a significant increase in traffic? Is what you're saying?
When we spoke with the police department, they were telling us that they did not believe that it would increase based off of what's happening now with our students being driven to school. And when I say police department, I'm sorry, I was talking about one of my board members that works for the police department. I didn't go ask the police department. So that was some of the things, we still need to speak with them as a whole.
Because keep in mind, out of the percentage that's not utilizing the busing that signed up for it, they're getting to school one way or another, which means they're being dropped off now, so that number's incorporated with the people that are already in line.
You still have a 60% ridership rate. If you cut that in half, that's a significant increase, right? I mean, that's just simple math.
Could be.
So how are you going to manage that?
We discussed, if I can interject for a minute, at Stevenson, At Stevenson, Officer Prinzo and I discussed the possibility of putting buses in the third grade parking lot and using both the turnaround and the front circle, which would allow for far more cars to drop off in the morning, and we would set grade levels for the afternoon. So that's one option that we were considering to address the number of cars. Just last week, one morning, we were counting every car that comes and goes. So one morning last week, we clicked on 102 cars. So we're ready, we already have a significant number of cars coming.
And, okay, so Churchill. Here's the beauty of Churchill. Our kids are bigger, so our kids are bigger, so basically, I gotta be honest with you, there's some parents that basically like slow down to like a slow roll and kick them out and tell them to tuck and roll. I mean, they can't get rid of them fast enough. So our kids get out, I mean, it moves. Our pickup line, if anybody's been here for a pickup line, we dismiss at 3:20, our pickup line is done by 3:23. Our drop off, yeah, we line you up, we usually do 2 lines, we gotta even fill up the middle. And once that 8:35 bell rings, I mean, we release the hounds, they're gone. We pull them all out of the cars, and it's fast. I mean, we're done with the vast majority, we're done by what, 8:40? I mean, we're prepared for it. Are we gonna get more? Yeah, obviously. And by balancing out the enrollment is also gonna help things at Stevenson, because I know their line's huge, A, but B, they're little. Like, you gotta get them out of their car seats, A lot of parents like to get out and like hug them and kiss them and stuff. Here, they don't want to hug them and kiss them. They can't get rid of them fast enough. I'm right?
I just have one quick question. Anthony Costi again. Since there's not going to be the same amount of buses, are we going to have more sidewalks? Because even on the main streets, there's no sidewalks. So you're going to have more kids that are probably going to walk to school. If that's allowed, right? Kids can walk to school because I don't really see kids on kids walk.
I've had kids walk.
Okay, so is there going to be more, even on by Stevenson, on Mill Road, there's no sidewalks. And even on Longacres, where I am, there's no sidewalks. I don't even think is there sidewalks here? I don't even. Are we going to put more
There's a sidewalk
sidewalks?
that goes all the way down, yeah.
Since there's not going to be buses now to take the kids, at least on the main roads?
That's not my realm.
I mean, would that be a consideration?
So, right, we're not in charge of sidewalks, right? We don't do them. Right, so sidewalks, they don't belong to the district, so we're not really responsible for that. We have to, I just want to say, this is an informational meeting, right? So as far as the subscription busing, a lot of the questions and the concerns that you guys are bringing up, we may not have the answers. We're listening to them, and we're taking them all into account. So I just want to make you aware of that. And they're very valid concerns. They really are.
I totally get what you're saying. I totally understand. But something when you're getting rid of busing, sidewalks should have been right there. Well, we're going to have more kids walking to school. Maybe we can get some sidewalks put in with the money that we're not going to be spending on buses. And this is, and also to another concern.
Unfortunately, we can't, the sidewalks don't belong to the Board of Ed.
Another concern, you said this was an informational meeting. I came here to learn more about what the school is, the 3 subjects that you guys had put on that flyer. This was not a transparency meeting, in my opinion. This was a meeting to tell us how it's going to go next year. That's not.
So, as a board member, I'll speak to that, okay? So I've been on now for just over a year, and unfortunately, my first year we were COVID stricken. So there was a lot of inconsistencies with everything, right? In uncertain times, and unparalleled, and a national pandemic that we've never experienced, okay? But I do want you to believe that this is an informational meeting, and it's strictly because you guys said you want us to be more transparent and communicate with you guys in regards to what we're doing. Now, you're right, we came here, and we gave you exactly what we're doing. And the transparency part is by bringing the administration and them telling you exactly why. Because we could have come here and said, this is what we're doing, the board voted on it, and moving forward, we think this is the best option. But the transparency portion of this is having our administrators and our principals and our teachers here explaining to you actually how we came up with these decisions. So we cannot get any more transparent about why we are doing what we are doing than this evening.
I get why you're doing what you're doing. I totally get it. I totally think third graders should come up here. I get it. But.
So what's not transparent about that?
This is the first time I've heard of this.
Yes.
I didn't hear about getting trailers before. I haven't heard, not even the idea popped in. Hey, we're thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? You're just basically telling us how it is. And just ask parents, what do you think about this? Like even the busing, like it stinks that we're getting rid of the buses. Especially since 60% don't even use the buses. And the people that use buses are being suffering from the car.
So 2017, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, my son was kindergarten, first grade, and my daughter was just about conceived, right? I didn't know back then when I moved into town that we had a space issue. But from 2017 on, that's all the board has been doing, and I wasn't on it up until this last year. But since 2017, being involved in sports and recreation and municipal alliance, I hear constantly, space is an issue, space is an issue. Space is an issue, space is an issue. So since 2017, it's been addressed. Maybe not.
Addressed in what way? That spacing is an issue, that's it.
No, we've had presentations, we've talked about it at board meetings.
Yeah, they've had multiple presentations in board meetings since 2017 that space was an issue, and unfortunately, this is where we are. So again, we are trying to be as transparent as possible based upon your request.
I would really hope that you guys consider talking to whoever you talk to get sidewalks put in for these kids, because somebody's gonna get hit. And we live on Long Acres, and I can tell you, just my kids standing on the road, people are driving 50, 60 miles an hour on that road, and they don't care, despite that there's a stop sign or Stevenson.
It's a valid concern. And we are obviously going to put the effort forward to find out what can be done to keep all the children safe.
I just got one more question, not to beat a dead horse about the busing, but I just want to understand so that we make an informed decision. Regarding the busing, it will not be subsidized from the district by any means. It will be solely the responsibility of the families. I just want to be clear. I mean, for the subscription busing, that, you know, like, if the bus costs $35,000, the families are responsible, divvy up by how many students ride the bus, that $35,000.
So again, that all depends what the survey comes back. If we have 60%, 30% participate, I mean, it all depends when the survey comes back.
No, I understand, but what I
see, there's something. School districts, my crystal ball is only but so crystal, okay? And unfortunately, in order for me to have a better idea, there's a lot of moving parts, and one of them, again, going back to the governor's budget address, like, until February 22nd, until those numbers come out, and until I see what the survey results come back, it's almost like I can't do one thing without the other.
No, so basically you're saying depending on the results of the survey and depending on how much a bus would cost, it may be a possibility that the district would provide some subsidy to the parents of the bus. So meaning that you would pay, the district would pay partial and the families would pay partial? Or is it the responsibility of the family alone to pay?
It would be the responsibility of the family alone to pay. Now, I just want to go back. By law, if a family is eligible for free or reduced lunch, meaning they submit an application and they fall within the income guidelines, the district is responsible for paying for that transportation. So there may be families who are eligible for free or reduced lunch, where in that situation, the district would have to be responsible for either all of their transportation or part of it, right? If it's
depending on where they fall on those guidelines. Yes,
correct.
I understand. So I just wanted to be clear because again, it's going to help the decision on how parents are going to vote on that survey. That's.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
busing will be available for those that live within the 2 miles of the school. And then there are families who live beyond that. They offer such a food bus as well? Or they just automatically get bused?
We legally have to give them busing.
Okay, and then what about those families who live beyond the 2 miles but don't use the busing system? That's a waste.
We
And that's
still
not fair for
legally
those-
have to offer it to them. That's the
Right.
law.
But, yeah, okay, so you offer to them and they don't use it. And that's a waste. And it's not fair for those that live within the 2 miles that have to need it and busing. And then those families who have the ability, have this, and don't use it. So that's like,
So we have, in the past, we've had that issue, and we have taken steps to address those issues. That's how we started taking attendance. Just, I want to say last week, there was an email that went out to a few parents because we noticed that their kids were registered to take the transportation, but they weren't using it. So we reached out to those parents and we said, hey, we're showing that you're requesting transportation services, but you're not using the transportation services. If you're not using these transportation services, we may use your child's seat for someone who is waiting, right? Who may be on a wait list for transportation. So we've had these issues in the past, and the way that we've addressed it is we reached out to those families and we've said, hey, listen, we took attendance, we noticed that your child is not riding, you need to start using these services, right? So this issue has come up in the past, so those are the steps that we've taken in the past to address it. Unfortunately, there's laws that we have to abide by, and the law is that we have to provide it to them.
what is child, what wait list is this? I don't understand. You said a wait list. So there could be a child who is not receiving.
So in the beginning, we had more requests for transportation than what we had seats, and then eventually that tapered off. So what ended up happening was we had all these parents who were listed as wanting transportation, but the seats weren't available, right? But then when we started looking at attendance and as the school year went on, that's when eventually the seats started becoming available. We were seeing 20, 30 children on a 54-passenger bus. So in the beginning of the school year, that was one of the issues that we've had, where we ended up having to reach out to some of these families and say, hey, listen, we noticed that you're not riding the bus. We have other kids that are waiting, especially like some of the incoming kids. There were some issues where we had incoming kids and we had to reach out to some families that were not riding the bus. But eventually, again, as the months went on, it sort of tapered off, and now we're at that point where we have 60% ridership, meaning 40% are not riding, and this is only at Stevenson. So I just want to point that out again. You're welcome.
As a follow-up question, would you consider, once you have the information to do the budget and you're able to take a look at how much we can afford, even though the law says you only have to do it within the 2-mile range, once you have the forecast for next school year, would you consider, instead of just doing only 2 miles because that's what the law requires, if we can afford to do 3 miles or anything to kind of help? I'm sorry, is it 1 mile? You only have to do it within 1 mile?
No, you only have to do it within 2, you were going the other way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're eliminating per
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
you
yeah.
want to do that.
We've been here a long time. So would you consider, once we have a better assessment of how much we can afford, expanding the radius, whichever way, so that we can capture more families?
That would be a decision that we would have to make collectively between the board. That would also be something that would have to be addressed by our board attorney, right? So that is something that we would have to decide on collectively.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
We'd like to thank you all for coming out and for all of your opinions, and we will take everything into consideration. And feel free to always reach out if you have a question. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I know, trust me. I think I was screaming out of the door. Oh, we going.
The fun is just beginning.
Hey there.